Chapter 301. After Darius finished speaking, Erica, or rather Pandora, whose eyes had lost consciousness, erupted with black mud all over her body. The black mud came menacingly and swallowed Darius in an instant. Ha! Ha ha ha! The black mud that engulfed Darius began to condense into a black sphere. Inside the black sphere, Darius's wanton laughter could be heard. Immediately after, the pitch-black sphere began to vibrate, as if something was rushing out from the inside. The entire black sphere began to deform irregularly from the outside. However, how can I give you a chance? Instantly, the two stone plates in Wu Ming's heart lit up. I will deny the sky, deny the earth. The storm will destroy everything, and the rain will cover everything. With this supreme divine power, I will make everything in the world bow and kneel. Lightning! 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 I am the conqueror who can defeat 1,000 with a white, 10,000 with 1,000, and 10,000 with 10,000. Now for me who is on the side of justice, please shine brightly and bestow me with divine power. Wu Ming chanted 2 words in a row, and a raging storm enhanced by violent thunder and lightning appeared in his hand. With a violent destructive force that could destroy everything, it spun and hit the black sphere. However, Darius, who was swallowed by the black mud, was not unable to move. Kaboom! Countless black mud whips formed into countless black mud whips and bombarded the oncoming thunderstorm with violent explosions. With the supreme primordial power, I will crush all enemies and enmity from humans and demons. This is my violent incarnation. In an instant, Wu Ming added the aura of the origin dragon to the thunderstorm. The black mud whips that were in a stalemate were instantly broken by the thunderstorm and bombarded the black sphere. The pitch-black sphere let out what sounded like a miserable shriek. However, Rin Dosaka and the others could not recognize this sound. They only felt that there was a sound. It should be said that they received the sound through their brains and not their ears. Everyone who heard this voice held their heads in pain. Wu Ming said to Kalas after noticing Rin Enbin's strange behavior. Kalas, cut off the call, set up the defensive barrier, and get away from here. Yes, master. Kalas immediately cut off the sound transmission on both sides of the screen. Following that, Kalas also set up a barrier in the Lunar Palace to prevent the voice from reaching everyone's minds. She then operated the Lunar Palace to leave this place. After they could no longer hear anything, their expressions gradually turned for the better. Will Wu Ming be alright by himself? The recovered Rin asked Kalas. The others also looked at Kalas with concern, waiting for her answer. Master's hypostasis is at the pinnacle of existence. His mind and soul won't be affected, Kalas replied. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief. What about his body? Mayu suddenly said. Brother Wu Ming's current body is not his original body. It's just the body of a servant. Can the enemy affect Brother Wu Ming's body? Answer me, Kalas. Mayu looked at Kalas with some seriousness. When Mayu said this, everyone reacted. Yes, Wu Ming said that he was not dead, and his body was not here. His current body was just the body of a servant, which was a body made of magical power. Although this body was extremely powerful for ordinary people, for an enemy of that level, I'm afraid. Mayu just looked at Kelly and didn't move a single step. If it's the body, the enemy can indeed affect the master. After a moment of silence, Kalas answered Mayu's question. Then what is Brother Wu Ming's chance of winning? Mayu continued to ask. After all, Kalas is a magic dress, and the calculation of the winning rate can naturally be analyzed. However, Kalas did not speak again. According to the comparison of the current strength of Black Clay and Master Wu Ming, the result of the calculation is that the winning rate is only less than 5%. At this time, Sapphire, who had been serving Mayu, calculated the result. What? How can it be so low? Everyone was surprised. After all, it was Wu Ming who took the initiative to attack Ainsworth. As for the information, Wu Ming should have collected it. No matter how stupid Wu Ming was, he would not fight an unprepared war. Then isn't Big Brother in danger? Let's hurry and save him. Ilya said in a panic, and then ran out. However, Blackie pulled Ilya back. What are you doing, little Black? Don't stop me. Ilya, calm down. Even if you go, you won't be able to do anything. The difference in strength is too great. Little Black shook his head and said calmly, "That's right, Ilya. Little Black is right. I don't have the confidence to defeat that sphere," Ruby said while floating beside Ilya. But are we just going to watch Big Brother like this?" Ilya shook her head sadly. Everyone did not speak, and they all became silent. Sapphire's calculation of the winning rate is only for the previous master. The current master is no longer the same as before. At this time, Collis suddenly spoke. "What do you mean?" Livia took a step forward and looked at Collis. Actually, Master killed a god in another world and seized the god's power. As soon as Alice's words left her mouth, everyone was immediately stunned. But thinking about Wu Ming's identity, everyone was relieved. By the way, isn't Big Brother originally a god? Ilya, who did not understand anything, asked. Of course not, Ilya. Wu Ming appeared as a fantasy breed in Mesopotamia's mythology. Although he's a god in name, he's not the same as a god, Rin and Osaka said. Legend has it that Hyunryong is the son of the Mesopotamia's god of creation, Tiamat. He's the closest to Tiamat, and he's even the highest fantasy breed that surpasses Tiamat. In other words, Big Brother isn't a god, right? Little Black concluded. Actually, Master was born from the origin. What? Everyone was truly surprised by Alice's words. Unfortunately, Ilya still didn't understand. That. Ilya smiled embarrassedly and looked at everyone. The origin is the origin of all things, the cause and effect of all things, the origin of all things, the ultimate truth. Rin and Osaka's explanation left Ilya dumbfounded. Simply put, without the origin, there would be no world, and there would be no us, Little Black said simply. I see. But if that's the case, aren't we also born from the origin? Ilya was confused again. We're different. Although there would be no us without the origin, we weren't born from the origin. You can understand that we're the infinite differentiation of things born from the origin, and were finally formed, Livia explained. Wu Ming, on the other hand, was born directly from the origin. His status is comparable to the two great restraints. That. What's restraints? Ilya was embarrassed. She really did not know anything. Forget it. Next time, I'll give you a good all-around lesson. Rin and Osaka sighed and then shook his head helplessly. Actually, Master wasn't born from the origin of this world. Instead, he was born from a place of a higher status. A higher status? Everyone was confused. I feel so embarrassed. All right then, even Ilya wanted to cry. Even the others didn't know about this, so there was no way she would know about it. Chapter 302. Did you know that there are other worlds outside this world? Kala said in detail. It seems that you're not talking about parallel worlds. Rin and Osaka touched his chin and said thoughtfully. When Rin and Osaka said that, the others frowned thoughtfully. That was what people often did when they were thinking. What do you mean? Well, this time it was Ilya again. Ilya had already closed her eyes in fright. Ilya basically didn't understand what everyone was saying. Now, Ilya felt that she had lost her face to the limit. Everything in the world is born from the root, and naturally, there can be more than one world. And where do these different worlds come from? It's the place called the Great Root. The Great Root? Everyone repeated Collis's words and thought carefully. Master is the existence born from the Great Root, the legendary dragon, the Root Dragon. Doesn't that mean that Wu Ming's level is higher than the suppression power? Rin and Osaka exclaimed. In short, that's right. After Collis said that, everyone became nervous again. But Collis paused for a moment after finishing her sentence. Master, as the Root Dragon, is not yet an adult, and because of some accident, Master did not absorb power from the Great Root after he was born, but was forced to leave the Great Root. Therefore, Master is not that powerful. Since Collis became Wu Ming's noble phantasm, she became the owner of Wu Ming's existence, and she knew about Wu Ming's origin and life. Although most of it was from Wu Ming and Collis when they were chatting. Wu Ming told Collis that it was not a secret, and although it was not necessary to be too secretive, it was better not to tell others. For Rin and Osaka and the others, Collis judged that they were already regarded as trustworthy partners, So she told them those things. Everyone also understood that Collis trusted them by telling them such a mysterious secret. Naturally, they would not do anything to leak it. After a long period of silence, Livia suddenly spoke. The accident you mentioned, could it be related to the black mud? Livia is right. That's very possible. In comparison, Wuming is a little too obsessed with the black mud, Ren Enbin agreed. Everyone, including Mayu, couldn't help but ponder. Everyone, including Mayu, had an expression that said, "It seems to be true." After all, no matter how one looked at it, Wuming was too obsessed with the black mud. Whether it was Wuming's understanding of the black mud or his expression when he talked about it as if he was facing a great enemy, it all showed how much he cared about the black mud. Although there were 2 reasons to eliminate Ainsworth to prevent them from being a threat to Mayu, and Wuming himself saying that how could he not return the favor after being beaten up? However, Wuming gave everyone the feeling that he was extremely obsessed with the black mud. Rin, if you think about it carefully, Big Brother is really too obsessed with the black mud. Little Black frowned. Everyone looked at Collis. However, Collis didn't intend to explain. Regarding this point, let's wait for Master to return victorious and let Master tell you personally. Then Collis fell into silence. Look. Ilya pointed at the screen that was still open and exclaimed in surprise. Everyone looked at the screen. On the screen, the black ball that was hit by Wuming's thunderstorm had turned into a headless giant. No, it was not headless. The head of the giant was Darius, but because it was too small, it was unclear. The scene shifted to the scene. Wuming looked at the black mud amalgamation that did not disappear after receiving Wuming's full force attack, and turned into a giant. It turns out that all the disasters inside Pandora's box have been transformed into this black mud. Wuming clearly recognized that the black mud was the mud-like substance that Wuming saw inside the big root. Those mud-like substances seemed solid, but in fact they were some gas. A large amount of black mist condensed into a mud-like black mist amalgamation. And now, the black mud giant in front of him was a new substance born from the combination of the black mist and the disaster substance in Pandora's box. It looked like some sticky black mud, but that black mud had the power of the root. The root was the origin of all things, and naturally, it was also the origin of bad things, and naturally, it also had bad power. However, that was not correct. There was no good or bad power. Only the person who used the power could distinguish the good from the bad. For example, if Wuming was a heinous criminal, then Wuming's power was the source of evil. However, Wuming, who chose to stand on the good side, had the power of light. It could only be said that the black mud was just a new substance produced by the fusion of countless disasters in Pandora's box and the unknown black mist with the power of the root. How is it, Hyunryong? This is the eternal. This is the root. Darius, who was at the top of the black mud giant, laughed crazily again. But soon Darius stopped, as if he had changed from a neurotic to a sage. Oh right, I almost forgot. You were also born from there. How could you not know? I'm sorry, Root Dragon. Saying so, Darius smiled warmly. However, Wuming's eyes shrank sharply when he heard that sentence. But soon, Wuming was relieved. So that's how it is. Did the black mud tell you? Wuming immediately guessed how Darius knew his identity. The black mud had the power of the root. The black mud and Darius merged together, and the two resonated like symbiotic entities. The black mud knew Wuming's identity, although it did not have any self-consciousness. At least, that was what Wuming saw at the moment. In this way, Darius, who had merged with the black mud, naturally knew Wuming's identity. However, this made Wuming begin to doubt whether these natural enemies of Wuming had self-consciousness. Not here. It did not mean that there were none in other worlds. At least, Wuming did not think that these actions, which came from the same root as Wuming, could not travel between worlds. It would be terrible if some people with high authority were to combine with the black mud. Don't worry, Lord Root Dragon. These black mud do not have self-consciousness, Darius suddenly said. Wuming frowned. Did Darius see through his thoughts? I saw your identity by accident when I was fusing with them. No one told me about it. On the surface, Wuming still had a frown on his face, but in fact, he was relieved in his heart. Although my wish has almost been fulfilled, Lord Root Dragon, I am a little interested in your birthplace, the big root. Wu Ming's frown became more obvious, and Darius became more abnormal. I don't know why, but I'm eager to return to home now, Root Dragon. Be devoured by me, and return to the big root with me. Chapter 303. After swearing his oath, Darius began his so-called devouring of Wu Ming. One after another, tentacle-like mud whips stretched out from the black mud all over the big holes, constantly attacking Wu Ming. Swish, swish, swish. Wu Ming dodged the tentacles that stretched out from the black mud on the ground one after another, and looked at Darius, who had become neither human nor ghost. At this moment, Darius' lower body was in the headless mud giant's body, and his upper body was still wearing a thin black shirt. However, the skin on his exposed arms had begun to turn dark. The black substance covered Darius's body, forming a pattern that looked uncomfortable. Darius looked at Wu Ming with his black-red eyes. Okay, Dragon of Origin, don't resist anymore. Quickly become one with me. After dodging a few more black mud whips, Wu Ming shook his head as he looked at Darius. It's hopeless, his soul has been completely eroded. Since many years ago, Darius had been using substitution magic to transfer his personality and soul to the next generation of his descendants. Since then, Darius's soul had become broken. So far, although Darius himself said that he had become eternal, Wu Ming, who was no stranger to this black mud, could easily see that Darius' soul had been completely eroded. It was completely eroded by the fusion of disaster and the black fog in Pandora's box. In that case, I don't need to show mercy, Wu Ming said indifferently. Ha. Ha 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 ha, show mercy. Are you kidding? Dragon of Origin. Darius began to laugh when he heard Wu Ming's words. If you're talking about the power of origin that restrains each other, then don't bother. With this Pandora's box in hand, these tools can be said to be endless. Do you understand? Darius's tone was abnormal. Moreover, like a French marshal, Darius's eyes began to bulge. I don't need to use up all of your black mud. Just capture the leader first. Wu Ming's golden eyes slowly lit up as he stared at Darius as if he was looking at a dead object. This gaze made Darius a little afraid. What a joke! Didn't you say you couldn't use your noble artifact? If you can summon your true body, then I might be a little afraid. But you can't summon your true body. You can't fight me at all. Darius almost roared to hide his fear. After dodging a few more black mud whips, Wu Ming closed his eyes. After this, Wu Ming was entangled by the black mud whips. It seems that you know that I have returned to my origin. Indeed, my true body can no longer be summoned by a mere servant, and other noble artifacts won't be of much use to you. To put it simply, this caster magician profession won't work on you, but after that, Wu Ming's closed eyes suddenly opened, and Wu Ming's body exuded a golden holy light. At the same time, the huge dragon body that was sleeping inside the root suddenly emitted a special light from the dragon horn. It was also at this moment that some of the black mist inside the root rushed toward the light. In front of the dragon body, a space-time portal was opened, and the light broke the seal of the black mist and entered the space-time portal. Then the space-time portal disappeared. The black mist that didn't succeed in organizing went crazy and began to wreak havoc on the huge dragon body. However, countless holy light and thunder burst out in an instant, vaporizing the black mud. The scene changed, and above Wu Ming, who was entangled, a space-time portal suddenly opened, and a huge golden beam of light descended in an instant, enveloping Wu Ming. The beam of light vaporized the black mud whips that entangled Wu Ming in an instant. I didn't say that my true body can't interfere with this servant's spiritual base. Like a god descending, Wu Ming's entire body was shrouded in the golden beam of light. His white clothes fluttered in the wind, and his golden hair fluttered wantonly. His two bright golden eyes shone even brighter. This is? Go to hell, go to hell, go to hell, go to hell. Darius was stunned at first, then roared wildly, driving the headless mud giant toward Wu Ming. And the black mud in the big pit quickly gathered in the direction of Wu Ming. The black mud hit the golden beam of light like waves, but the golden beam of light was like a stubborn stone on the coast. It couldn't be destroyed. Instead, the black mud that came into contact with the golden beam of light began to burn, emitting light smoke. An existence that specifically targets the malignant tumor of your world. Servant, savior, descends here. Wu Ming, who was inside the beam of light, declared. When the beam of light disappeared, Wu Ming's outfit changed. The original short golden hair turned into short black hair, and the golden pupils turned into red pupils. However, the pure white clothes didn't change much, but there was a layer of golden lines on the white robe. The golden lines emitted light, illuminating the earth, looking extremely mysterious. Wu Ming's current appearance can be said to be exactly the same as his true body in human form. Then, the black mud that was illuminated by the golden light began to emit green smoke, like a necrotic creature, shrinking and disappearing. This power, could it be? Darius couldn't believe it. That's right, Darius. This power is the origin power. Wu Ming raised a hand, and a ball of golden particles attached to it. Do you think you can win like this? Don't forget, I have the origin power too. As he said that, Darius also raised his hand like Wu Ming. Black particles materialized and attached to it. Wu Ming naturally understood what Darius meant. The origin power did not have a fixed form. The two's powers were different only because Darius's origin power was attached to the black mud, while Wu Ming's origin power was a natural ability obtained by Wu Ming, who was in the origin power. They were powers of the same origin, but they were also powers that countered each other. This was also the reason why Darius did not retreat even though he panicked. But, Darius, do you think I changed my spiritual base just for the origin power? Wu Ming smiled. Wu Ming used his true body in the Great Origin not just to change Castor's spiritual base into Savior's spiritual base. Haven't you noticed that the world is rejecting you now? Chapter 304. After Wu Ming said this, Darius also felt it. He now felt that the whole world was rejecting him. Just like material evolution, the earth, the sky, the flowers, the air, everything became harmful to Darius. It was not that it became something else, but it became an additional attribute, Darius poison. Just like how humans could not adapt to the air on Mars, Darius gradually began to be unable to adapt to the environment on Earth. What's going on? Darius felt his body begin to decay, and immediately began to wrap his body with the power of the source. It could only be said that the power of the source was somewhat of a cheat. Almost everything was restrained by it. After all, it was the origin of everything. And only the power of the source could restrain the power of the source. It's actually very simple. I just added an ability to my spiritual base. Wu Ming kindly explained to Darius. Nemesis of evil Yex, Savior is righteous. Once identified by the Savior as evil, and their actions have an impact on the world, they will be counterattacked by the power of the world of the same level. The degree of the counterattack is enough to kill and cause fatal effects. You are the guy who absorbed all the disasters in Pandora's box. As an existence that brings disaster to the world will give you the same punishment. Wu Ming smiled. Don't be surprised. For me, who is in the source, changing the rank of a mere clone servant is not difficult. Moreover, with my identity, even if I tell Gaia and Alea, I can change my rank at will. Just think of it as me cheating to save effort, the disaster of the world. Wu Ming's series of words stunned Darius. Then Darius began to laugh. Ha 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 ha. Covering his black and red eyes, Darius laughed wildly. Then, as long as I devour your clone, I will leave this world. That's it. Darius stared at Wu Ming as if he was looking at a delicacy. Then I will go to the source and devour your body. That way, I will be a god. A true god. However, Wu Ming scoffed at Darius's words. If not for the fact that his main body still needed to draw power from the root, it would not have been difficult for Silent's main body to find the black mud that had fused with the black mist in Pandora's box, even if he could not easily find it. Moreover, if Darius really did go to the root, then he would definitely die without leaving a trace. With the origin dragon and the great origin, how could a mere world's calamity cause any trouble? Then I'll let you die in peace, Darius. After saying that, Wu Ming began to chant the spirit words. All evildoers, be afraid of my power. Now, I will obtain the majesty of 10 mountains, the strength of 100 rivers, and the strength of 1,000 dragons. What the majestic me raises is the ferocious dragon mark. Instantly, Wu Ming's body emitted a bright light. Die. At that moment, Darius' attack arrived. A huge black mud palm instantly grabbed Wu Ming. Countless black mud that contained origin power surged toward Wu Ming from the black mud giant's arm that grabbed Wu Ming. But Wu Ming struggled to break the hand that grabbed him. Don't underestimate the power of the dragon seed. Dragons, no matter which country it was, or which myth it was, were all powerful existences. As the origin dragon, Wu Ming's main body was naturally powerful. Compared to being a spellcaster, Wu Ming was more suited to be a warrior. This was a God-given ability bestowed by Wu Ming's main body. A powerful body and a powerful spiritual base brought about unparalleled power. As for the dragon seed incarnation, it was purely to enhance Wu Ming's physical attributes. Whether it was strength, speed, durability, magic power, spirit power, resistance, etc., all of his attributes were increased. Coupled with the boundless origin power in his body, Wu Ming's contact with the black mud was as easy as cutting through paper with a sharp blade. I am the strongest and the one who holds all victory in my hands. No matter if it's a human or a demon. I am the one who defeats all enemies' hostility. I will defeat any enemy that stands in my way. As the words were uttered, a golden dragon-shaped giant that was the same size as the black mud giant appeared. Bang bang. The golden dragon-shaped giant threw 2 punches. The black mud giant was unable to defend against these mutually reinforcing attacks. The black mud giant's body was instantly shattered. It's not over yet. I won't lose. Darius roared, and the black mud giant that had been scattered instantly recovered. Immediately after, the black mud giant hugged the golden dragon-shaped giant. Countless black mud rushed toward the golden dragon-shaped giant. After all, the dragon-shaped giant was instantly dissolved. Wu Ming came out of the golden dragon-shaped giant's body before the black mud covered the golden dragon-shaped giant. Wu Ming looked at the disappearing golden dragon-shaped giant in the air and felt a little helpless. That's why this kind of mutual restraint is really a headache. It wasn't that Silent Wonder couldn't win. Rather, it was as if the two of them were mutually damaging each other. Both of them had attributes that countered each other. Silent Wonder, who had many trump cards, would only find it slightly more difficult to win. Soon Wu Ming's expression turned into a smile. However, this is also the reason why I'm changing my class. That's right. In order to avoid trouble, Wu Ming used the world's power, and used Bane of Evil Yex to constantly destroy Darius's black mud giant body. Boom. The black mud giant was about to fall apart, and Darius's face was also ugly. While maintaining the world's resistance, he also had to fight against the power that restrained him. It was inevitable for Darius, who had just fused with the black mud giant, to struggle. As if he had guessed his fate, Darius roared in despair. Why? I've spent 1,000 years. Finally, I opened Pandora's box, and I gained supreme power. I gained immortality. Why did you appear? Looking at Darius like this, Wu Ming chuckled. Without me, your plan wouldn't have succeeded. Let's not talk about Gaia. Even Alea would have stopped you. Without Wu Ming, Zelik wouldn't have saved the world. Regardless of what happened to the earth, human beings were doomed to destruction. And Alea, as a human consciousness, must eliminate the scourge that led to the destruction of human beings. In addition, there was another reason why Darius was doomed to fail. For victory, come to me quickly. Immortal son, please give me a shining steed. Horses with enough intelligence, bring me the light wheel that symbolizes your master. Fear the one with wings. Evil people and powerful people are all afraid of me with wings. My wings will bring you a curse. Evil people won't be able to hit me. Wu Ming condensed a sun in his palm and slammed the small condensed sun into the black mud giant's chest at lightning speed. Boom! Instantly, the black clay giant's chest exploded. What was revealed wasn't a hole, but Erica or Pandora. At this moment, Pandora was wearing a thin black dress, with long hair like a noble lady. Her eyes were closed, and her hands were hugging her legs. But strangely, Pandora's body was constantly emitting light, which was the hope that restrained all the disasters in Pandora's box. Now do you understand, Darius? the Pandora's box that released all the disasters is only left with hope, the hope to save humanity. Chapter 305. As if responding to Wu Ming's words, Pandora responded to my body and emitted some strange light. The light wrapped around the black mud giant, and the black mud giant made a sound. How is this possible? A mere box is actually my nemesis. I have been planning this for 1,000 years. 1,000 years. I can't accept this. I can't accept this. Darius roared madly, like the last roar of a trapped beast before its death. It was so miserable that it made people sympathize with him. Being suppressed by the world, his body was basically composed of the disaster in Pandora's box, suppressed by the hope in Pandora's box. At present, the only thing that could work was Wu Ming's source power. Why do you think Pandora's box appeared? Crisis and hope coexist. Now take this despair back to the source. For victory, come to me. Immortal son, please give me a shining steed. O spirited horse, with the lifeline of my origin dragon, I bestow upon the eternal glory. Bring me the wheel of light that symbolizes me. On the stone plate in Wu Ming's heart, two simple pointers pointed to the stone plate with the sun. With the stone plate emitting a red light, the immortal sun attached to Wu Ming's body. The sun incarnation not only had the ability to summon the sun, but also the ability to turn Wu Ming himself into the sun. Wu Ming used the sun incarnation attached to his body, ignited an endless golden sun flame, and burned the black mud giant. Darius may have made a mournful scream, but Wu Ming's ears were filled with the sound of burning flames, and there was no room for other sounds. Accompanied by the burning flames, countless rays of the sun blocked everything. And by the way, it set off a solar storm. The solar storm blew the Showa Moon Temple in the distance, but soon, the Showa Moon Temple stabilized. All the people in the Showa Moon Temple were in disarray. Rin stood up, patted her skirt, and looked at everyone. Is everyone all right? Ilya rubbed her head in a daze and looked at Mayu, who was supporting her, as well as Blackie, who was being supported by Sakura Madu. She smiled embarrassedly. He's fine, probably. Seriously, what on earth did Wu Ming do? Livia grumbled. Making a lady fall was not something a gentleman would do, let alone Wu Ming. Look at the screen. Bazette pointed at the screen that was originally used to communicate with Wu Ming. At this moment, the screen had turned white. The people in the lunar temple looked at the screen that had turned white and felt the violent tremors just now. They fell into deep shock. Then, the virtual screen dimmed like a TV that had its power cut off. This should be Big Brother's magic power messing up the screen's magic power reception. I'm afraid that Big Brother's surroundings have become unsuitable for modern people to live in a magic power environment. No matter what, Shiro Amiya was someone who had received special training in the clock tower. He was able to analyze this phenomenon. At this moment, Ilya spoke carefully. Big Brother won. Ilya was not the only one. Almost everyone present was paying attention to Wu Ming's situation. Although everyone believed in Wu Ming's strength very much, at this moment where the outcome could not be determined, everyone's mood was still very uneasy. This was especially so for Mayu. At this moment, Mayu's expression had turned very pale due to worry. Master has won. There's no doubt about it. Colos's cold voice sounded. It was unusually simple and clear. However, everyone felt that this voice was filled with joy. Colos's words caused everyone to sigh in relief. Mayo's helpless expression turned warm. Then can't we immediately go to Big Brother's side? Ilya asked. After all, Shiro Amiya had already said that Wu Ming's surroundings might have become unsuitable for modern people to live in. The lunar temple can adapt to almost any environment. As long as you don't go out, you won't be affected, Colos explained. Then, everyone looked at each other and nodded. Then, as the captain of the lunar temple, I'll go to the big crater at full speed in the name of the lunar temple. Rin Enbin said in a pretentious manner. Surprisingly, Livia did not refute Rin Enbin this time. Well, I'll let you be in the limelight. In the corner, Beatrice hugged her legs in fear. Her face was buried between her legs as she sat on the ground, because the impact of the solar storm just now happened to wake Beatrice up. It seemed that because she did not have a rank card, Beatrice appeared to be quite weak at the moment. Angelica stood where she was as obedient as ever. Even the solar storm just now had not been able to make this puppet, who had mastered displacement magic, lose her composure. Angelica looked at the excitement and joy on everyone's faces. She couldn't wait to meet Wuming and closed her eyes. So boring, Angelica said softly. However, this sentence was full of envy. In the big crater, the light that almost covered the entire Winterwood city dissipated, revealing a scene that looked like it had been scorched by the sun. Yes, there was no magma everywhere, nor was there a piece of the earth dug out. It was just the scene of the earth being scorched by the sun for a long time. The only difference was that the originally pitch-black mud had completely disappeared. Wuming stood in the big crater with a person in his arms, and another person lying next to him. Erica, who was in Wuming's arms, seemed to have fallen asleep. She lay in Wuming's arms peacefully. Her little head moved unconsciously, and vague sounds came from her mouth. Erica, or rather, Pandora, because the countless disasters in Pandora's box had left the box and merged with Darius. Therefore, Pandora could be said to be completely harmless. Because there was no need to kill her, Wuming saved her. After all, she was a great hero who helped Wuming defeat Darius. As for the person lying next to Wuming, if Shiro Amiya was here, he would be very shocked. The person lying next to Wuming was Julian Ainsworth. Logically speaking, it was impossible for Julian, who had been completely replaced by Darius, to reappear. However, because his soul had fused with the black mud, Darius had left Julian's body. Julian, who was originally unconscious in the black mud, was discovered when Wuming defeated Darius. Thinking that it was easy, Wuming saved Julian. As for why Erica was in his arms, and Julian was lying down, Wuming expressed that Julian was a big man, and it was not as comfortable as Erica, who was a little girl. This is. Julian opened his eyes slowly. Because the sun was too bright, Julian subconsciously used his hand to block the sunlight. You're awake. Wuming's voice came from the side. Hearing Wuming's voice, Julian's pupils shrank. Chapter 306. Julian's eyes were a little shocked, but he soon recovered. Darius was defeated, Julian said calmly. From his voice, Wuming could feel a trace of hope. Yes, including the soul. He was completely defeated. Wuming turned his head to look in the direction of the sun, and said with a smile, the suppression of the world, the hope in Pandora's box, and Wuming's source power combined these three forces. Darius's wish was completely shattered. Darius and the black mud were all burned clean by Wuming's sun. Why did you save me? Suddenly Julian asked. I didn't want to save you. You saved yourself, Wuming retorted. If it were someone else, even if I killed Darius, his original personality would not reappear. Although Darius said that you have been completely replaced by him, from the looks of it, you should have resisted Darius's replacement magic with your strong spirit. Wuming turned his head to look at Julian. Julian was silent, which meant that he acquiesced. I've done a little research on the Ainsworth family's replacement magic. It's already shocking for an average person to be able to hold on for more than 10 days without being completely replaced. You actually managed to hold on for years with your own willpower. It's really rare. Because Darius set the replacement magic on his descendants, Darius would start to replace the personality of a random person in each generation, every time after a certain period of time, making himself immortal in a sense. Because this was a curse engraved in the soul, many descendants of Ainsworth had no way to come into contact with it. It must be said that Darius's replacement magic was really powerful. Each replacement only took a few days, and the replaced personality would become Darius, who retained his previous memories. Julian, who could continue to not be replaced, could be said to have extremely strong willpower. You can now live without any direction. Darius will no longer switch to your body. Now Darius, whose soul and personality had fused with the black mud, was mentally destroyed by Wuming. Even if the curse was still engraved in Aria's soul, the curse would break on its own without the crucial replacement. After Wuming finished speaking, Julian fell silent. Thank you, Henryong. Then, Julian thanked Wuming in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing. So, is there anything you want to do as the head of the Ainsworth family that is free from Darius' control? Wuming suddenly said. You have been hostile to Erica from the beginning. Although I don't know why you are so against Erica, for the sake of the future, please tell me the reason, Wuming said in a tone that brooked no refusal, and then looked at Julian coldly. Julian glared back at Wuming, not to be outdone. It had to be said that Julian was indeed a ruthless person who could resist Darius without being replaced. This is the cause of all the disasters of the Ainsworth family. Keeping her is also a disaster, Julian said with an unhappy expression. But no matter what, she is still your sister, isn't she? Wuming did not believe that Julian would not have any sibling feelings for Erica. At this point, Julian fell silent. Wuming chuckled when he saw this, then said, You don't have to worry about Pandora's box. Darius and the calamities in Pandora's box have all been wiped out by me. Even the hope left in Pandora's box has been exhausted in the final battle just now. Right now, Pandora's box is already empty. Wuming looked at Erica in his arms after saying that. The gods that have disappeared can no longer place disasters and hope in it. You should take up the responsibility of an older brother. With that, Wuming waited for Julian's reply. After hearing Wuming's words, Julian looked at Erica in Wuming's arms and fell into deep thought. However, no matter what, Julian was not a bad person. Otherwise, Shiro and Mia would not have become friends with him. Soon Julian figured it out. I understand, Hyunryong. Julian nodded at Wuming. Then, he took the sleeping Erica from Wuming's arms. Wuming was not worried that Julian would lie to him. A person like Julian would not stoop to lying to Wuming in order to kill Erica. This was a matter of principle. Julian carried Erica and walked out of the crater. After taking a few steps, Julian turned his head and looked at Wuming. I will contact the clock tower to explain. By the way, I will be responsible for repairing this crater. Leave the clock tower to me. You can be an ordinary high school student. Wuming waved his hand. Then Wuming laughed mischievously. By the way, you have been absent from school for a long time for no reason. Do you need me to contact the school for you? I have some power in Winterwood City. As soon as Wuming said that, Julian's face darkened. He turned and left. Just like that, Wuming watched as Julian left the crater and entered the forest at the edge of the crater. At this moment, a virtual screen suddenly appeared beside Wuming. Great, Wuming, I finally got in touch with you. Rin Enbin on the other side of the screen heaved a sigh of relief. Because they had managed to contact Wuming, the three little Lolas were a little excited. They made a fuss on the other side of the screen, causing the screen to be a little abnormal. After hearing Rin Enbin's words, Wuming realized the problem. Because of the sudden increase in the concentration of mana around the crater and the distance between them, the lunar temple's signal could not reach Wuming for a while. When the lunar temple arrived near the crater, they finally managed to contact Wuming. As for Wuming's position in the crater, the concentration of mana was normal. This was because Erica and Julian were here. Wuming pushed the high-purity mana in the crater out of the crater. Otherwise, Julian would not have been able to talk to Wuming so calmly. **T. Wuming instantly realized that Julian would be eroded by the high-density mana after leaving the crater. Well, think about it. Julian was still fine after being replaced for so long. A little high-density mana shouldn't be a threat to him, probably. Wuming smiled awkwardly as he thought to himself. Speaking of which, where's that black mud guy? Wuming, did you destroy him? After adjusting the screen, Rin Enbin's face reappeared on the screen. Don't worry. The enemy is completely destroyed. There's no more danger. Wuming smiled. Big brother. Suddenly Little Black's voice came from afar. Wuming turned around and saw Little Black, Ilya, and Mayu running toward him in their transformed forms. They were clamoring to see you, so I teleported them down. Rin Enbin smiled awkwardly. Really? Wuming shook his head helplessly. When Mayu and the others were teleported down, it must have happened when the screen was abnormal. Fortunately, Rin Enbin teleported inside the crater and not outside. Otherwise, it would have been dangerous. You sent them down so hastily. Aren't you afraid that the enemy isn't dead yet? Ahahaha. You're here. Rin Enbin also realized this problem and smiled awkwardly. Ignoring Rin Enbin, Ming turned around and looked at Mayu and the others running toward them. Big brother! Brother Ming! Ilya and Mayu also shouted one after another. Ming smiled as he squatted down and opened his arms. When they were about to reach Ming, Mayu suddenly sped up and instantly overtook Little Black and Ilya. She ran to the front and jumped into Ming's arms. Ah! Mayu, how can you do this? Mayu cheated. Little Black and Ilya pouted as they looked at Mayu and Ming's arms. However, the two of them only complained and did not do anything else. Brother Ming. Thank you. Thank you. Mayu shed tears of joy as she leaned into Ming's arms. Silly. You're my sister. You don't have to thank me. Ming smiled gently as he placed his chin on Mayu's head and comforted Mayu. Brother Ming. I like you the most. The sun shone on the siblings, and Little Black and Ilya saw a beautiful scene. They couldn't recover from their daze for a long time. Chapter 307. Ming didn't let Rin and Osaka land the lunar temple. Instead, he let Rin and Osaka drive the lunar temple back to the lunar mansion. After expelling all the high-density mana, Ming brought Mayu, Ilya, and Blackie back to the lunar mansion. At this time, Shiro Amiya and Sakura Madu were already in the kitchen preparing a celebratory feast. Rin and Osaka and Livia, on the other hand, looked like they couldn't take it anymore. They were lying on the table, unable to get up. Don't think that the magic workshop of the gods was easy to operate. Without enough life force, there was no way to operate it. Fortunately, the two of them looked like they just ran a marathon and were completely exhausted. By the way, if it wasn't for the large amount of mana that Ming injected into the lunar temple and the help of Kalas, Rin and Osaka and Livia would have been bedridden for 10 days if they were lucky. If they were lucky, they might have died. After all, the bodies of modern people and kamikaze people were different. Kamikaze people who could adapt to the high-density mana air were much stronger than modern people. Because he didn't want other people to participate, Ming originally planned to let one of his clones control the lunar temple. Because of this, the lunar temple was designed according to Ming himself. It was already a big surprise that modern people like Rin and Osaka and Livia could control it. I feel like we've been tricked by you, Ming. Livia said weakly. I feel the same. Rin and Osaka weakly said 2 words and then stopped moving. You two insisted on coming. If I don't give you some work to do, it would be rude of me. Ming smiled as he replied to Rin and Osaka and Livia. However, no matter how you looked at it, Ming's smile contained a sense of evil. Well, that's good. You two just lie there, and don't cause any trouble. Blackie crossed his arms and looked at Rin and Osaka and Livia with a gloating expression. Damn it. Wait for me to get up, see if I. Then the two of them didn't even have the strength to say anything. Sister Rin and Sister Livia, are they really okay? As expected of Ilya, she was still worried about the two of them. Don't worry, I've injected them with life-sustaining medicine when they weren't paying attention. Kalas suddenly appeared in front of everyone. While speaking, Kelly used her dragon horn as her hand and shook the syringe that had no trace of medicine left. Ahaha. Ilya laughed helplessly. Magic costumes like stabbing people with syringes. Putting away the syringe, Kelly floated to the front of Ming and said softly in a voice different from the cold voice she used to talk to others. Master, I'm back. Ming didn't know where Kalas got such information from. After Kalas finished speaking, Ming was stunned. But Ming reacted instantly. He extended his hand. Welcome back, Kalas. Also, you've worked hard. Kalas flew to his hand. Ming put Kalas on his head. Although Kalas didn't say anything, Ming had a feeling that Kalas was happy. I'm going to cook. Since the two of you are like this, you won't be able to eat my cooking. What a pity. Otherwise, I won't cook. As soon as Ming said this, Rin Enbin and Livia seemed to have regained their senses before death as they abruptly climbed up. Wait. No matter what, we're the ones who contributed. It's not too much to ask for a meal in return. After all, it's the result of your hard work. You should at least try it. Rin and Osaka and Livia spoke rather elegantly. They didn't look like they were half dead from lying on the table a moment ago. Mayu Lilhei and Ilya smiled awkwardly. By the way, I'm also looking forward to Big Brother's cooking. Ilya smiled sweetly. Aha, I agree, Lil Hay said. Brother Wuming. Mayu looked at Wuming with anticipation. Yes, I'll cook when I get back. You guys look forward to it. Bazette, take care of them, Wuming said to Bazette, who was sitting on the sofa. Bazette looked like the sky was falling. To be honest, she wasn't good at dealing with children. But in order to pay for her trip home, Bazette nodded. Yes. Then Wuming looked at Angelica and Beatrice, who hadn't said anything. You two come with me, Wuming said calmly. Then he walked out of the room. Angelica followed them obediently, but Beatrice looked scared. Beatrice had no choice but to follow him, leaving behind the dumbfounded Mayu, Ilya, Lil Hay, and Rin Enbin and Livia, who were half dead again. When they came to the courtyard, Wuming stopped and turned to look at the two. I'm not a bad person. You don't have to be so scared. Wuming looked at the scared Beatrice and said, Yes. Beatrice replied stutteringly. After a pause, Wuming said, I want to tell you two things. The first thing is that Darius is dead. As soon as he finished, Angelica and Beatrice's eyes suddenly shrank. Obviously, they couldn't believe this sentence. Looking at the two's disbelieving eyes, Wuming continued. Don't doubt it. I've already wiped him out completely. In other words, you're all free now. Angelica and Beatrice came back to their senses and believed this conclusion for the time being. Then, did Master Julian also? Beatrice asked softly. This is the second thing I want to say. I saved Julian. After Wuming finished speaking, he began to observe the expressions of the two. Beatrice had a great expression. From her eyes, Wuming could see that Beatrice had special feelings for Julian. Angelica, on the other hand, still looked indifferent. Then what I want to ask is, do you want to return to Julian, the current head of Ainsworth? Or do you want to leave Ainsworth and start a new life? Or do you want to leave this body of a puppet? Although both of them were puppets and dead people, Wuming didn't feel that they couldn't live a new life as puppets. Playing with souls was something that Wuming was ashamed of, but for people who had returned to the ground and weren't unforgivable, Wuming would still let them choose their own future. Life or death, it was up to them. Chapter 308. I want to go back to Julian, Sama. Beatrice said eagerly. Wuming thought it was quite rare. It seemed to be the first time Beatrice dared to speak loudly to Wuming. Wuming nodded. Of course, I can help you contact Julian. Or you can find him yourself. But Julian is definitely not in Ainsworth Castle in Winterwood City. Even if you want to find him, you may not be able to find him. I advise you to stay here first. Wuming checked Ainsworth Castle. Because of Darius' death, the whole castle turned into rocks. It turned out that Ainsworth Castle was the result of Darius using displacement magic to replace the rocky mountain. As soon as Darius died, Ainsworth Castle naturally changed back to its original appearance. As Wuming said, Julian would not go back there. Moreover, although Beatrice could leave alone, Beatrice may not be able to find Julian. After all, Beatrice no longer had a class card, and she could not protect herself in the face of danger. As a result, Wuming felt a little guilty for letting a little girl wander around. Wuming would not return the class card to Beatrice. Not to mention that Beatrice had used the class card for a long time. Her spirit and personality were somewhat abnormal. If he returned the class card to Beatrice, it was hard to guarantee that Beatrice would not hurt people. Therefore, Wuming suggested that Beatrice stay in Shoyu's house for the time being, waiting for Wuming's help to find Julian. Wuming already knew the real name of the Berserker class card used by Beatrice. It was Magin, the eldest son of Thor in Norse mythology, the god of strength in Norse mythology. The giant hammer Beatrice used when she used Dream Summon, install, was indeed Mjolnir, the weapon of Thor, the strongest god in Northern Europe. In Norse mythology, after Thor and Jormungandr died together, Thor's Mjolnir and Thor's divine title were inherited by Thor's eldest son, Mani, and second son, Modi. Through this point, Berserker Mani's card had all of Thor's divinity and the right to use Mjolnir. The reason why Beatrice did not die after being hit by Shiro Amiya was because of her inherent skill, Dusk Survivor. When she was judged to be dead, Thor's divine core would replace her, but at the same time, She lost the right to use Mjolnir and became the god of strength. If it was just Manny the Hercules, she had no special skills. Well, okay then, Beatrice said weakly. What about you, Angelica? What is your choice? Wu-Ming looked at Angelica and asked directly. I'm an abandoned puppet, and now my master is you. I won't go to Julian, Angelica said without hesitation. Hearing Angelica's words, Beatrice wanted to say something, but because of Wu-Ming's presence, Beatrice didn't dare to speak. When did I become your master? Wu-Ming said helplessly. From the moment you picked me up, you are my master. Angelica's eyes were emotionless. Seeing this, Wu-Ming frowned. Displacement magic was really cruel. Wu-Ming also investigated Angelica. She was originally the eldest daughter of this generation of the Ainsworth family, Julian Ainsworth's elder sister, Angelica Ainsworth. She died 6 years ago when the black mud caused the Winterwood City crater disaster, and was resurrected by Julian, or Darius, with the displacement magic. The displacement magic had this drawback. That was, the person who was resurrected by the displacement magic would lose some things, such as memories and emotions. What Beatrice lost was her love for Julian, but with her own efforts, she fell in love with Julian again in the past 6 years. Angelica, on the other hand, had lost her feelings. A puppet without feelings was a complete prop. Angelica was such an existence. Angelica, who had lost her feelings, defined herself as a puppet. Therefore, even if she knew that Julian was her younger brother, Angelica still called Julian Lord Julian, and not her younger brother because she had no feelings for him. Then you can stay and be a maid in the Shoyu residence. Wu-Ming did not know what to do with Angelica, who had no feelings for him. Human feelings were the most difficult to understand, and Wu-Ming could do nothing about Angelica, who had lost the most difficult thing to understand. Wait until I find Julian and see if there is any way to restore Angelica. In fact, Wu-Ming had another way to deal with Angelica, which was to give Angelica to Julian. However, this was not in line with Wu-Ming's own principles. Wu-Ming would not treat humans as objects. This was the choice of Wu-Ming, who had turned from a human into a dragon. Humans were the most priceless treasures. Yes, Lord Wu-Ming. With that, Angelica walked away. Needless to say, she must be carrying out her duties as a maid. Beatrice looked at Angelica, who walked away alone. Facing Wu-Ming alone was enough to scare her. You should go back first. Remember to find a room for yourself. As soon as Wu-Ming finished speaking, Beatrice ran away as fast as she could. Am I that scary? After temporarily solving the problem of Angelica and Beatrice, Wu-Ming joined the kitchen and prepared the meal for the Shoyu residents with Shiro Amiya and Sakura Madu. At the dining table, Wu-Ming was still sitting at the head of the table. Little Black and Mayu sat on the left and right sides of Wu-Ming respectively. Iria sat beside Mayu, and below them were Sakura Madu and Shiro Amiya. Below Little Black's row were Bazit, who looked calm, and Rin and Osaka and Livia, who looked at Shiro Amiya and Sakura Madu with sad eyes. Angelica, on the other hand, used her status as a maid to reject Wu-Ming and the others' invitation. Beatrice, on the other hand, chose a room and hid in it alone. When Tong Ying went to call her, Beatrice said that she was not hungry and would not eat. However, in Wu-Ming's opinion, Beatrice was mainly because of Wu-Ming's presence. However, this was also good. After all, tonight's banquet was held to celebrate defeating Ainsworth. The two of them were prisoners of war, but they were invited to the banquet where they defeated him. It was a little strange. Speaking of which, where did Gil Kun go? Iria looked at the empty seat opposite Wu-Ming and asked curiously. Don't worry about him. Children will know to go home when they are hungry. Wu-Ming waved his hand casually. At that moment, the door opened. Ah, I'm starving. Looks like I'm not late. Dinner has just started. Gil's voice came. Chapter 309. Gil sat across Wu-Ming and looked at the delicious food in front of him happily. Ever since Wu-Ming started fighting with Darius, Wu-Ming noticed that Gil was missing. Although he did not know why Gil only came back now, he decided to ask that question after dinner. The most important thing now was to have a happy dinner. All right, since everyone is here, let the celebration officially begin. Wu Ming raised his glass and announced the start of the banquet. Everyone raised their glasses. Of course, Ilya Mayu and Xiao Hei's glasses were filled with fruit juice. As for Rin and Osaka, Livia, Shiro Amiya, and Sakura Madu, who were still underage, naturally they drank fruit juice. As for young Gil, Wu Ming naturally prepared fruit juice for him since he had an underage face. However, that did not make young Gil unhappy. After all, young Gil's temper was the best that Wu Ming had ever seen. It seemed like only Bazette, who was already an adult, and Wu Ming, who was already an adult, he was definitely less than 100 years old. 50 would be too much. Had wine in their glasses. By the way, the wine was provided by young Gil out of friendship. The wine that Bazette drank was diluted. If an ordinary person drank too much of the wine of God, they would die. Cheers! Everyone said in unison. Wu Ming finished the god's wine in the cup in one gulp and exhaled happily. This wine is still the best, Wu Ming said happily and poured himself another glass. It seems like Sensei hasn't drunk for a long time. You really liked this wine when you were in Uruk. Young Gil took a sip of his drink and took out a few bottles of the wine of God from the gate of Babylon and tossed them to Wu Ming. Wu Ming caught the god's wine and kept it in his precious artifact. Even I sometimes envy you, Gil. Wu Ming joked. Wu Ming was naturally referring to Gil's gate of Babylon. Young Gil had already retrieved his rank card. Although he didn't know why he didn't use it and kept it as it was, he had already taken back control of the gate of Babylon. That was why young Gil could give Wu Ming a few bottles of God's wine without a care. The reason why Wu Ming, who possessed the Manchala phalanx, said so was because the items that Wu Ming and Gil possessed were different. The last king was given the mission to kill all of the god slayers. Each time Rama killed all of the god slayers, the gods would give Rama many weapons. As time went by, almost all of the god relics were stored in the Manchala formation. However, these god relics were basically offensive. After all, one couldn't just give a warrior a bottle of wine and ask him to fight a battle. Therefore, the god relics that the gods gave Rama were mostly weapons. However, Gil's Gate of Babylon was different. The Gate of Babylon contained 2/3 of the treasures in the world. Although it was only 2/3, most of the treasures were in Gil's treasure vault. Her face was extremely red. But, it's delicious. Mayu said. Ilya, if you're not going to eat it, I'll have to do it for you. Xiao Hei looked at Ilya, who did not eat for a long time, and made a threat. Don't even think about it. Ilya instantly pouted. With an she swallowed the food that Wu Ming fed her. Wu Ming put down their spoons and said to the three of them, All right, eat properly. When Sakura Madu saw this scene, she felt that it was very novel. Then, she did the same thing to Shiro Amiya. Come on, senpai. Sakura Madu looked at Shiro Amiya with blushing cheeks. It must be said that Sakura Madu was a very shy person. She was bold to do such a thing to Shiro Amiya in front of so many people. Sakura. That. Shiro Amiya scratched his face in embarrassment. However, in the end, he still swallowed the food that Sakura Madu fed him. Rip. Suddenly, the sound of cloth being torn was heard. Rin and Osaka and Livia smiled elegantly. The tablecloth in front of them was torn in half. You guys continue. Nothing happened. Rin and Osaka and Livia continued to smile. Shiro Amiya felt that it was better for him to not ask any more questions. Meanwhile, Bazette, who was eating delicacies by himself, wiped his mouth. How boring. Then he kept moving his knife and chopsticks as he quickly ate the food. There aren't many opportunities to eat for free. I must grab hold of them. He thought to himself. Laughter kept coming out of the Shuasuki residence. The moon seemed to be infected by the laughter. The moonlight was especially clear and bright as it illuminated the Shuasuki residence. Chapter 310. It was a beautiful day with no clouds for thousands of miles. The sun shone on the earth, covering everything on the earth with a layer of brilliance. Wu Ming held a small black box in his hand and sat under the sun with his eyes closed. Now a week had passed since the last battle between Wu Ming and Darius. After the celebration banquet a week ago, Wu Ming went to find Julian the next day. Wu Ming found Julian easily. To Wu Ming's surprise, Julian rebuilt a house in the forest near Winterwood City. Although it was not as big as the previous Ainsworth Castle, it could be regarded as a small villa. Coincidentally, the forest where Julian built his villa was close to the Shuoyue mansion. After all, the original address of the Shuoyue mansion was the Weigong Mansion, and the Weigong Mansion was built on the land that Weigong Jishi bought on the edge of Fuyuki City. In this way, Wuming and Julian could be said to have become neighbors. Naturally, the fact that the two became neighbors could not be hidden from Shiro Amiya. After Shiro Amiya learned that Julian was fine and had escaped the fate of the Ainsworth family, he ran to Julian excitedly to catch up. Although Julian still hated Shiro Amiya very much, Julian still cherished this rare friendship. Shiro Amiya even stayed at Julian's house that night. This made Sakura Madu quite worried. After all, Julian and Shiro Amiya both lived together. Julian was a great enemy for Sakura Madu. Ahem, just kidding. After that, Wuming told Beatrice about Julian's situation and couldn't wait to find Julian. Julian also let Beatrice live with him for the time being with the guilty mentality of, after all, I used her. This made Beatrice happy for a long time. It was said that Beatrice had prepared more than a dozen night attack plans. Ahem. On the other hand, Julian was at a loss when it came to his elder sister, Angelica. Although Angelica had died a long time ago, and Julian also regarded Angelica as a puppet with his sister's skin during this time, Angelica was still his sister. This puppet had his sister's personality attached to it. Julian gave the strongest Gilgamesh card to Angelica. From this point, it could be seen that Julian still had a sibling relationship with Angelica. Since she has become your maid, let her stay in your house for now. That was what Julian meant. Just like that, Angelica became an official maid of the Shuoyue residence. And the black square box in Wuming's hand was Pandora's box. All along, Pandora's box had been hidden by Darius at the top of Ainsworth Castle. But even so, Erica was still connected to Pandora's box. Erica, on the other hand, created Pandora and Pandora's box because the gods wanted to bestow disaster upon humans. It could be said that Pandora's true form was Pandora's box. It could be understood that the Holy Grail produced a personality and body. She was Mayu. Pandora's box produced a body and personality independent of the box, and that was Erica. Although she wasn't inseparable from the Holy Grail like Mayu, Erica was still connected to Pandora's box. This Pandora's box was given to Wuming by Julian when he met him again. This box is no longer empty, but even so, I think it should be of some use to you. At that time, after Julian finished speaking, Julian didn't wait for Wuming's reply and threw Pandora's box to Wuming. In the end, Julian added another sentence. This is also Erica's choice. She said that you bring her warmth and you need this. With that, Julian left. Wuming was left with a helpless expression. However, Wuming really needed Pandora's box. In the courtyard, Wuming collected his thoughts and ended his research on Pandora's box for the day. At that moment, Angelica, who had just arrived, walked up to Wuming and reported, Lord Wuming, the large hole at the edge of Winterwood City has been repaired. Angelica, who was wearing a maid's uniform, said, Thank you for your hard work, Angelica. Wuming comforted her. Angelica bowed slightly to return the greeting. After Winterwood City broke away from the Ainsworth family, or rather, Darius's control, Wuming successfully took over Winterwood City and became the manager of Winterwood City. Because of the parallel world, although this world had the Inosaka family, there was no Rin in Osaka. Winterwood City had always been managed by the Ainsworth family. Of course, this was the result of Wuming's deliberate indulgence. Now the manager of Winterwood City was the Amiya family. After all, Amiya's identity as Wuming still had some influence in Winterwood City in this parallel world. Some of the staff of the clock tower, and even the higher-ups of Winterwood City, who had connections with Magician, didn't pay much attention to the change of manager of Winterwood City. From the perspective of the clock tower, it was normal for a small city in the Far East to have a manager change. It was nothing more than a family defeating the original manager, and the original manager's family became a vassal. As long as the new manager was still nominally under the management of the clock tower, there was no problem. Of course, Zelik also played a role in this matter. For the higher-ups of Winterwood City who knew about Magician's world, It didn't matter who the manager was. It was just a change of partners. As for the repair of the large hole in Winterwood City, Wu-ming didn't let Julian undertake it. Within this week, Wu-ming contracted the repair of the large hole in Winterwood City, and the manager of this project was Angelica. Although Angelica didn't have Gilgamesh's class card, her use of replacement magic could be said to be superb. Even a first-rate magician couldn't withstand Angelica's tricks. Therefore, Wu-ming gave this task to Angelica. It had to be said that Angelica was indeed useful as a subordinate. This was because Angelica had been a genius before she died. After she was turned into a puppet, her advantages were revealed. She carried out the task seriously, didn't procrastinate, didn't cut corners, and was capable of doing things. In less than a week, she finished repairing the large hole in Winterwood City. For any lord, this was a valuable subordinate. It was no wonder that Julian and Darius kept using Angelica. Although Wu-ming didn't know why Darius wanted to abandon Angelica, he didn't need to know. Anyway, he was the one who benefited. By the way, Angelica, do you still have a free class card? Wu-ming suddenly had a thought. Ever since he obtained Pandora's box, Wu-ming would conduct research for a period of time every day. The research time was fixed every day. Hence, Wu-ming, who had completed his research early today, attracted Mayo's attention. I have some ideas. Don't worry. Wu-ming patted Mayo's little head again as he spoke. Speaking of which, where did Bazette go? Wu-ming asked. He had asked Bazette to look after the three Lolas until Wu-ming finished his research. But now Bazette had disappeared. That. Because I wanted to eat ice cream. I asked Big Sister Bazette to buy it. Ilya smiled embarrassedly. Now that you mention it, I remember that it's still summer in Ilya's world. On the second day after the celebration banquet, Wu-ming sent Ilya and the others back to the parallel world. Along the way, Wu-ming also set up teleportation doors at the Shoyu Mansion and Emiya Mansion. Those were the doors that could travel between the two parallel worlds. Rin and Osaka and Livia had to report on their mission, so they returned to the British Clock Tower. Bazette stayed behind because he was still considered Wu-ming's subordinate. Hence, he did not return to Ilya's parallel world. It had to be said that this was a sad story. As for Ilya and Blackie, they came here because the weather there was too hot. Firstly, they were here to look for Mayu. Secondly, they were here to relieve themselves from the heat. After all, because this world was once on the verge of extinction, the Earth's axis had shifted a lot. This caused Ilya's world to be in hot summer, while Mayo's world was in cold winter. But it seemed that the heavens were happy because Darius was defeated. It didn't snow much in the past few days, and the temperature wasn't that cold anymore. Instead, it was very refreshing. But no matter what, Ilya and Blackie had just come from the hot summer. In addition, Mayu couldn't resist the double temptation of Ilya and Blackie, so Bazette was forced to leave to buy ice cream. Of course, Bazette left through the back door. Wu-ming was in the front yard. If Bazette left, he would definitely be discovered by Wu-ming. You three, be careful not to get a stomachache. Wu-ming helplessly patted their heads one by one as a warning. Hee, Ilya and Blackie chuckled. Mayu blushed and lowered her head. Ah, big brother, have you completed your research? At that moment, Shiro Amiya's voice sounded. They looked toward the source of the voice. Shiro Amiya was wearing travel attire and carrying a large suitcase. He looked at everyone with a smile. Bro. Mr. Shiro, are you going to do something? Ilya asked in puzzlement. Blackie also had a curious look on his face. If it's wrong, he's going to England, Mayu explained. England. Ilya and Blackie were puzzled. It's like this. I'm going to England's clock tower to continue my magic cultivation, Shiro Amiya said with a smile. So sudden? Blackie was a little surprised. After all, they had defeated the final boss and could finally have a good rest. Shiro Amiya was going to cultivate again. I was the one who suggested Shiro go, Wu-ming said. Big brother suggested it? Ilya and Blackie looked at Wu-ming. Yes. After all, the manager of Winterwood City is now the Amiya family in name. If Shiro doesn't learn magic well, He won't be able to live up to the manager's name. After Wu Ming said that, Mayo's eyes dimmed. Moreover, I also gained a lot of things from the clock tower. It would be too heartless to leave them behind. Shiro Amiya touched the back of his head. Also, Sakura will go with Shiro. You don't have to worry. Ainsworth was defeated. Sakura could return home that she didn't dare to return before. Moreover, Sakura Madu went home to sell her property and go to England with Shiro Amiya. As for why she sold her property, she was going to change her name to Amiya Sakura in the future. She didn't leave a way out for herself. By the way, because Shiro was about to leave, Wu Ming wasn't in a hurry to exchange the Shuiyue mansion and Amiya mansion. The mansion in Mayo's world was still the Shuiyue mansion, and the mansion in Ilya's world was the Amiya mansion. I still have a plane to catch, so I won't chat for now. Goodbye everyone. After saying goodbye to everyone, Shiro Amiya left the Shuiyue mansion. At this time, Wu Ming noticed that Mayo's face was a little gloomy. Chapter 312. When Wu Ming said this, Ilya and Little Black also noticed that Mayo's expression was a little abnormal. What's wrong, Mayu? Are you not feeling well? Ilya said worriedly. If you're not feeling well, you must tell us. Little Black also had a concerned expression. Brother Wu Ming, I originally thought that you let Brother Shiro go to the Time Tower to train himself. Mayu lowered her head, and her bangs blocked Mayo's eyes. Wu Ming instantly understood. He squatted down and hugged Mayu with both hands. You let Brother Shiro go to the Time Tower to train, so that he can take on the important responsibility of Winterwood City's manager. Then what about you? Mayu continued. Ilya and Little Black also thought of something and looked at Wu Ming. Are you going to leave me again, leave this home? Mayu raised her head and looked at Wu Ming. Her tears could not stop flowing. Yes, I'm going to leave this place. Wu Ming did not appear to be panicking. He said very calmly. Big brother? Ilya and Little Black were surprised. But Wu Ming wiped Mayo's tears and said earnestly, this is something that I have to do. May you forgive me. After saying that, Wu Ming hugged Mayu in his arms. Ilya and Little Black also fell silent. No matter what, Wu Ming was a root dragon, a legendary divine dragon. He must have his own mission. I know that this is a mission that Brother Wu Ming has to do, but... Mayo's dried tears flowed again. But I can't bear to part with you, big brother. Mayo's last big brother was shouted in an extremely loud voice, and it almost penetrated the room. Wu Ming did not finish his words. Ilya and Little Black continued to maintain their silence. Only Mayu kept crying. Brother Wu Ming hugged me for the first time when we first met. Mayu began to recall. My family is dead, and so is my mother. Although I don't remember them, that sadness still lingered in my heart. At that time, I didn't understand all of this. Wu Ming hugged Mayu tightly. It's you, Brother Wu Ming, who saved me from this sadness. You gave me love, gave me a home, and gave me hope to survive. At that moment, Mayu looked at the back of her hand. Although Brother Wu Ming was my servant at that time, I don't feel that Wu Ming was fulfilling the responsibility of a servant to his master. Then, Mayu raised her head and looked at Wu Ming. I feel that Brother Wu Ming really treated me as a younger sister, and took care of me with all his heart. My heart tells me that this feeling is incomparably real. Mayu pressed her heart and continued to look at Wu Ming. That's why I chose to become a magical girl. I want to reduce Brother Wu Ming's burden. I hope that I can help you, and I hope that you don't have to work so hard. Mayu threw herself into Wu Ming's arms and did not say anything else. Ilya and Little Black, on the other hand, sensibly did not say anything and waited. I'm sorry, Brother Wu Ming. I'm too stubborn. I've caused you trouble. Mayu, who was lying in Wu Ming's arms, let out an unclear and weak voice. How could that be? Mayu, you're my younger sister. No matter what, I won't feel that you've caused me trouble. Wu Ming was still smiling gently as he caressed Mayu's cheek. It's been hard on you, Mayu. You must have felt terrible when I left you last time, right? After all, the gentler a person was, the fiercer they would be when they were angry. This was because this anger had accumulated over a long period of time. Mayo's outburst this time was the same. Making a young girl cry, "I'm really a coward," Wuming said self-deprecatingly. "No, Brother Wuming isn't a coward," Mayu immediately retorted. She looked at Wuming with her little face puffed up. Wuming snickered. When Mayu saw Wuming laughing, even Ilya and Little Black laughed. "I'm sorry, Ilya, Mayu. I've made the two of you worry." Mayu recovered and said to the two of them, "Sigh, really. Mayu should have vented it out earlier." Little Black waved his hand helplessly. That's right. If you're unhappy, you should look for your friends and family to confide in. If it were me, I might have run to the park and coincidentally be discovered by my mother. Then, I would have jumped into my mother's arms and cried." Ilya smiled. Little Black looked at Ilya with a displeased expression. Little did she know that Little Black had been like this. "Brother Wuming, thank you. Also, there's no need to apologize to your family." Mayu pointed out the matter of Wuming apologizing to Mayu just now. "Ha, it's my fault. How does Mayu want to punish me?" Wuming rubbed his head and smiled generously. "I want Brother Wuming to promise me that he will definitely be able to solve the problem safely and return to my side safely." As she said this, Mayu extended her pinky. "All right then. I hereby swear that I will definitely be able to solve the problem safely and return to my little sister Mayo's side safely." As he said this, Wuming also extended his pinky and made a pinky promise with Mayu. "It's a promise." "Yep, it's a promise. I also want to make a pinky promise," Ilya said sourly. "This is a promise between brother and sister. Why are you joining in the fun?" Little Black complained helplessly. I already called Big Brother Big Brother. No matter what, we can be considered brother and sister." Ilya strongly refuted. "According to what you said, I can also be considered as Big Brother's little sister. If Big Brother wants to make a pinky promise, then you can make a pinky promise with all of us." Little Black smiled mischievously. Yes, Wuming bitterly smiled helplessly. However, Wuming still extended his pinky and made a pinky promise with Ilya and Little Black. "I hereby swear that I will definitely be able to solve the problem safely and return to my little sister Ilya and Little Black's side safely." Wuming made another oath. "Then it's a promise, Big Brother," Ilya and Little Black said in unison. "Ah, it's a promise. Everyone." Then, the four of them laughed. Amidst their laughter, the four of them did not notice that a faint golden light was emitted from their bodies. The golden light instantly disappeared as if it had never happened. Outside the door, Bazette stood there obediently. He did not choose to enter. Bazette was holding a few melted ice creams in his hand. Although the ice creams had already flowed to his hand, Bazette still did not move. Bazette had actually returned a long time ago. When he walked to the door, he heard Mayu call out, "Big Brother." Originally, Bazette thought that an accident had occurred and wanted to rush in. However, a second before he was about to make a move, Bazette felt that something was amiss. Thus, he did not break the door open and rush in. For once, Bazette, whose intelligence was online, did not disturb the conversation between these four siblings. Instead, he stayed outside the door. "It's a promise?" Chapter 313. Early the next morning, Wuming switched the locations of the Shoyu mansion and the Amiya mansion. As Wuming would be leaving soon, Wuming placed the Shoyu mansion that Mayu was used to living in back in the Amiya mansion, so that it would be convenient for the little Lolas to connect. Before Wuming restored the Shoyu mansion, he informed Julian, "I'm going back to another parallel world. I'm taking Angelica with me." Then, before Julian could explode, Wuming slipped away. But there was no need to worry that Shiro Amiya and the others couldn't find Wuming when they returned. Wuming had already told Shiro Amiya how to travel to a parallel world. As long as Shiro Amiya wished, he could travel to a parallel world from the special room in the Amiya mansion at any time. But this didn't mean that Shiro Amiya was a mage. Zelik could freely travel to parallel worlds. This was the benefit of mastering the second method. Apart from that, Zelik could also mobilize the magic power of other worlds and other operations related to parallel worlds. On the other hand, Shiro Amiya relied solely on the equipment that Wuming set up in the Amiya mansion. The two couldn't be compared at all. Not only did Wuming and Zelik have the ability to travel to parallel worlds, but the Ainsworth family also had the ability to travel to parallel worlds. The fact that Angelica and Beatrice came to the Amiya mansion was an example. But according to Angelica, there were huge drawbacks when they used the technology to travel to parallel worlds. Not only did they have to set up a magical formation in advance, but they also needed a large number of worlds to set up the magical formation. The amount of magic power to activate the magical formation was also a problem. Moreover, the effect of the magical formation had a time limit. As Ainsworth used the displacement magic to swap the surrounding space and the same location in the parallel world, the amount of magic power required was huge. This was also the reason why Angelica and the others had come out of the Yuanzhong Mountains. They had borrowed the Holy Grail, which contained a large amount of magic power. With the help of the Holy Grail, the substitution magic was successfully activated. The Yuanzhong Mountain in Alaya's world and the Yuanzhong Mountain in Meiyo's world were exchanged, and the two of them successfully arrived in Alaya's world. Back then, when Shiro Amiya made a wish, the Holy Grail had used a similar method. Meiyu and the Yuanzhong Mountain were transferred to Ilya's world, while the Yuanzhong Mountain was transferred to Meiyo's world. This had a similar effect as displacement magic. However, it was permanent because Meiyo's world's Yuanzhong Mountain followed Meiyu to Ilya's world's Yuanzhong Mountain and never changed again. Ilya's Yuanzhong Mountain had always been Meiyo's Yuanzhong Mountain. Then, the black mud was burned by the sun and completely disappeared. This was the process of the black mud fusing with the disaster in Pandora's box, from the beginning to the end. Like a movie, it was displayed in front of Wuming. After seeing all this, Wuming stopped the transmission of his origin power and let go of the trace. Then this trace turned into a palm-sized black object that looked like a badge. Wuming fell silent. That infant was undoubtedly Wuming himself. Although he didn't know why, Wuming was very sure of it. And that mysterious place was the source. Although he couldn't see it clearly, there was no doubt about it. The light in the black mud was the hope in Pandora's box, and the one that was burned to death by the sun was Wuming's incarnation of the sun. What is the true identity of this black mud? Wuming muttered to himself in confusion. After thinking for a while, Wuming picked up the item with the black badge. In an instant, the badge attached to the back of Wuming's hand like a maggot, forming a black mark that looked like a dragon-shaped command seal. In the outside world, Wuming opened his eyes, looked at the black mark on the back of his hand, and said solemnly, "Looks like I have to leave this world as soon as possible." Chapter 314. Early the next morning, Wuming made breakfast early, used magic to keep it warm, and left the Shoyu mansion. England Clock Tower. Outside a room at the top, a purple-black portal opened, and Wuming walked out. As if they were very familiar with each other, Wuming didn't knock on the door, but directly pushed the door open and entered. The first thing he saw was a strong old man with red eyes. After all, they were old acquaintances. Wuming sat on the sofa and spoke directly. "Did you already know that those things had merged with the disaster in Pandora's box?" Unsurprisingly, the world of Meiyu was about to be destroyed because Ainsworth did something to the black mud in Pandora's box. Wuming didn't believe that Zelik, who solved the crisis of the world's destruction, didn't know about the black mud. "Yes, but it was something that was fated to be with you, so I kept it." Zelik looked at Wuming with his pair of unusually bloody red eyes. Wuming didn't want to be outdone, and also used his own red eyes to meet Zelika's eyes. Although both of them had red eyes, Zelika's red eyes leaned toward blood and was quite bloody, while Wuming's red eyes leaned toward gems and were deep and mysterious. "Well, forget it. I'm not here to condemn you this time, I'm leaving." After all, the black mud wasn't a big threat to Wuming. "Are you going to find the black mud?" Although it was a question, Zelik said with a certain tone. "A piece of black mud is enough to cause the destruction of the world. I don't have to say more about the impact of the other black mud on other worlds." Wuming's fingers gently tapped on the coffee table in front of him as he said faintly, What's more, the black mud has a lot to do with my background. Wu Ming thought. I see, protecting the world is the mission of the origin dragon? Zelik said. In a sense you're right. Then Wu Ming stood up and was about to leave. I can feel that the suppression is getting weaker and weaker, Zelik suddenly said. Wu Ming stopped in his tracks when he heard that. Ever since Wu Ming returned to this world, he had not communicated with the suppressive force. This was also one of the reasons why Wu Ming needed to rely on his own body's power to make a direct change. Wu Ming tried to contact Alea through the power of origin, but Alea did not reply to him. Although Gaia responded to Wu Ming's call, the response was intermittent, as if she was too busy. Wu Ming had a hunch that something bad had happened to Gaia and Alea ever since he learned that there were countless black mud going out to other worlds. Let's go look for the person who is connected to many stars and can resolve this crisis, Zelik suddenly said. You really have a bad sense of humor, Kitty. Wu Ming turned his head and looked at Zelik with an amused gaze. Actually, the you in the other world is a clone, right? Wu Ming said something shocking. Although I don't understand the second method, I know that it's related to the parallel worlds. After you mastered the second method, you've already fused yourself from all the worlds, right? And now, because of the appearance of the black soil, you've learned about me and created an opportunity for me to come to this world. You want to use this to lead me onto the right path, right? Wu Ming crossed his arms and said calmly. Ha! As expected of the legendary life form from the big source, Zelik laughed. That's right. I can travel through parallel worlds. When I was traveling through parallel worlds, I accidentally learned about the disaster and your arrival. So, I used the second law to create a clone of myself, and placed it in almost every parallel world, waiting for your arrival. Zelik laughed, not embarrassed at being exposed at all. But this also happened to save some worlds that were on the verge of destruction. However, I can't resolve the disaster in that world. The only thing I can do is to seal them in Pandora's box of that world, and delay the disaster. Zelik waved his hand. Wu Ming finally understood that Zelik was a genius who could create class cards. Such a genius couldn't open Pandora's box, and it took him 1,000 years of effort to completely open it. It turned out that Zelik had used the second law to seal Pandora's box. If I'm not wrong, the you in that world is actually your original body, Wu Ming said. That's right. After all, I've already found you. I've also retrieved the clones in other worlds. You really have a bad taste. Wu Ming looked at Zelik helplessly. Ha ha, isn't this interesting? This old man is having a good time, Zelrich said with a big laugh. Well, in that case you should know about that world. The world that Wu Ming was talking about was a world where a large amount of black soil existed. It was the world that Wu Ming was guided to by the dragon-shaped black command spell in his hand. This dragon-shaped black command spell was actually a signal transmitter that could help Wu Ming find other worlds where the black soil existed. However, this command spell could also allow the black soil in other worlds to find Wu Ming. It was also because of this that Wu Ming chose to leave this world as soon as possible. Of course, I can no longer enter the world with the most black soil. It has completely surrounded the periphery of the world. That's why I chose your help. I can't do anything anymore, Zelik said. However, if it's a small portion of the black soil that invades, I can still resist it. Go in peace. Zelik smiled. I feel like you're implying something. Wu Ming complained. Didn't you come here to ask me to protect your sister and the others? I'll agree. You make it sound like I'm begging you. Wu Ming turned his head, opened the door and left. Zelik looked at the door and fell into deep thought. After a moment, Zelik spoke. Where's the origin dragon? He returned to the Shoyu mansion through the teleportation portal. At this moment, Meiyu was sitting on the sofa in a daze, while Angelica was standing beside Meiyu in a maid outfit. Brother Wu Ming. When Meiyu saw Wu Ming, she jogged over and hugged Wu Ming. What's wrong? Why are you so excited? I didn't leave without saying goodbye. Wu Ming smiled and patted Meiyu's little head. Meiyu lay in Wu Ming's arms without saying anything. Master Wu Ming, Meiyu hasn't eaten breakfast yet. Angelica bowed slightly and said, Really, how can you not eat? Wuming pinched Mayo's little nose. Brother Wuming isn't here. I don't have an appetite. Mayu blushed as if she was not used to this kind of pampering. Let's go eat together. Why are you two here? Did something happen? Why? Big brother doesn't welcome us? How sad. After all, I was once a member of this family. Little Black teased Wuming. That. Big brother, because Little Black and I were worried that you would leave without saying goodbye, so. Ilya's face was a little red. That's why Ilya excitedly pulled me and jogged all the way here. Little Black waved his hand and looked at Ilya helplessly. This is all Little Black's fault. Who asked you to keep saying that Big Brother would leave without saying goodbye? Ilya was so agitated that her face was flushed red. She pounced on Little Black helplessly and started punishing Little Black. Of course, it was just scratching his armpit. Wait a minute. What do you mean it's my fault? Didn't you also want to see Big Brother? However, how could Little Black just sit there and wait for death? He flipped his hand and subdued Ilya. Damn it, I won't yield. Ilya said unyieldingly. Seeing this scene, Wuming and Mayu broke out in a cold sweat awkwardly. Mayu did it because she also had the same thought. Wuming did it because he indeed had the same thought. Alright. Stop fooling around. Since you're here, there's no harm in telling you when I'm leaving. I'm preparing to leave tonight. Hearing Wuming say this, Ilya and Little Black stopped fooling around. Is it that urgent, Big Brother? Little Black was a little surprised. After all, there's an accident. I have to leave this world as soon as possible, Wuming said solemnly. Big Brother, are you alright? Ilya looked at Wuming worriedly. Don't worry. It's just a little trouble. It won't get in the way. Wuming patted Ilya's head to console her. It's fortunate that we came tonight. Otherwise, Big Brother might have left without saying goodbye, Little Black said joyfully. Wuming could only smile awkwardly. But Big Brother left too suddenly. I don't have any gifts for Big Brother. Ilya touched her trouser pocket a little anxiously. There's no need. It's not like I'm not coming back. I'll solve the problem as soon as possible and come back as soon as possible. Wuming expressed that there was no need to give her any gifts. He made it seem as though he would never see her again. Haha, Ilya, you can't do it. It's just a gift. Watch me. Little Black looked at Ilya proudly. Then, she jumped into Wuming's arms and kissed Wuming's left cheek lightly. This prank kiss caused Wuming to freeze awkwardly on the spot. Then, Wuming smiled silently. Isn't this better? Turning around, Little Black smiled and looked at Ilya and Mayu, who were dumbfounded and blushing. You, what are you doing? Ilya shouted in panic. Although Mayu didn't say anything, her blushing face and lowered head showed that Mayu's heart wasn't calm. You can also choose not to give this gift. Ilya, I didn't force you. Of course, Mayu isn't the same. Little Black looked at Ilya with a teasing expression. And no. Ilya shouted in panic and instantly threw herself into Wuming's embrace. She gently kissed Wuming's right cheek and stopped after tasting it. Then, the blushing Ilya pulled Little Black and ran out of the living room. Wait a moment, Ilya. Little Black's sorrowful cry could be heard. Wuming touched his left and right cheeks that were kissed and smiled helplessly. These little guys. Then, Wuming noticed that Mayu was looking at his cheek. So Wuming looked at Mayu. What? Mayu wants to do it as well? Wuming teased. And no. Mayu blushed and lowered her head. However, Wuming went up and hugged Mayu. He kissed Mayu's forehead lightly. Brother Wuming. Mayu was shocked. Wuming looked into Mayu's eyes and said in detail. This is a reward for the obedient Mayu. I'm very glad that Mayu can become my little sister and bring me joy. Mayu was very touched. She leaned into Wuming's arms with a blissful expression. Me too. I'm very happy to be Brother Wuming's little sister. Chapter 316. After having dinner with the three Lolas and playing for a while, Wuming arranged for them to sleep. At night, Wuming stood alone on the roof, looking at the moon in the distance. Usually someone will come looking for me at this time. Wu-ming said without turning his head. Don't you think so, Gil? As the golden particles appeared, young Gil appeared beside Wu-ming. Are we leaving, teacher? Young Gil smiled gently. Yes, I feel it. Those things are coming. If we don't leave now, we'll be in trouble. Wu-ming was, of course, referring to the high-density black fog, hereinafter referred to as the black mud. Ever since the black dragon-shaped command charm appeared in Wu-ming's hand, Wu-ming vaguely felt that the black mud was moving toward the world he was currently in. Wu-ming was not afraid, but Wu-ming could not, and would not allow the black mud to affect Meiyu and the others' daily lives. Seriously, do you want to come with me? Wu-ming looked at young Gil. Although young Gil had been missing for the past few days, young Gil had more or less learned about the black mud. After knowing that Wu-ming could trace the other worlds where the black mud was, young Gil suggested that he should go with him. Of course. Don't forget, you used to take me to other places to play. Gil smiled. Wu-ming could not help but recall what happened in Uruk. Although the Gil in front of him was not the Gilgamesh Wu-ming met, Wu-ming's experience in each parallel world was the same. In other words, young Gil also had the experience of playing with Wu-ming. But Wu-ming estimated that the adult version of Gilgamesh in this world had different adult memories from the Queen Gilgamesh Wu-ming knew. After all, a man and a woman, their experiences were similar, but they could never be the same. Ah, you were very likable when you were a child. Wu-ming recalled and looked at the moon. Well, I also have a headache about what I looked like when I grew up. Why did I become like that? Young Gil looked distressed and looked at Wu-ming helplessly. Maybe this is the king, my best disciple. I think so too, my only teacher. The night continued to deepen. The moon emitted soft and bright moonlight, shining on the master and disciple. The next day, Meiyu got up early. Meiyu walked to Ilya and Black's room to take a look. Ilya and Xiaohei shouldn't be up yet. After that, Meiyu went to the kitchen and began to prepare breakfast. If it's brother Wu-ming, he should have left by now. Meiyu was making breakfast absent-mindedly. After making breakfast, Meiyu knocked on Ilya and Xiaohei's door and woke them up. Then Meiyu put the breakfast on the table. When the last plate was placed, Meiyu found a card on the table, which was the style of a class card. It's strange, there's nothing on the table, Meiyu said doubtfully. Meiyu had cleaned the table before placing the breakfast. It was impossible to miss a card, and it was a class card. I shouldn't have missed it. Also, could it be that Ilya's card accidentally fell here? Meiyu knew that he was a little absent-minded just now. Perhaps he had missed something. With that in mind, Meiyu picked up the class card. Caster Magician. Meiyu looked at the card that depicted a magician wearing a magician's robe, holding a magic book and a staff, and read the words on the card. However, after reading the rank of the card, the Caster Magician rank card actually emitted a golden light, and the whole card was dyed in gold. This is what the teacher left for you. Suddenly, a child's voice came. Meiyu quickly turned around and looked at the owner of the child's voice. Gilgamesh. Meiyu was a little surprised. That's right, it was young Gil. Now young Gil was sitting on a dining chair, holding a wine glass in his hand, and taking a sip. Because Wu-ming needed to go back to the route. So Wu-ming asked young Gil to wait for him here. When Wu-ming went to the target world, he would summon young Gil. You disappeared for a few days. Why did you appear after brother Wu-ming left? Meiyu asked warily. No matter what, the other party was the most ancient king, the hero King Gilgamesh. Meiyu was right. Young Gil went to visit this world out of interest, so he disappeared. Don't worry, the teacher asked me to give you that card. This was also why Meiyu didn't notice the existence of the class card just now. Brother Wu-ming gave it to me. Meiyu looked at the class card in her hand, a little stunned. Because the teacher changed the class card, the saver card was too burdensome for you to use, so Wu-ming chose to seal the power of his caster, magician, class into this empty card. And this card has been refined by the teacher, so it's different from the other class cards. It has supreme power, and the teacher hopes that it can protect you. Then, young Gil waved his hand helplessly. You should be content, Hyunryong, who protected the Uruk, protected a little girl. Your value in the teacher's eyes is much more important than the Uruk. Brother Wu-ming. Mayu muttered Wu-Ming's name silently, and tears of joy fell from her eyes. Sigh. Mayu, why are you crying? Little Black, who came to the dining room first, saw Mayu crying and panicked. Sigh. Mayu, did Jilkoan bully you? Tell me, I'll avenge you. Ilya, who came one step later, saw Mayu crying. She then looked at young Jill, who was sitting beside Mayu, and instantly took out the ruby that refused to come out from her hair. Ruby transform. Aya, I'm still sleeping. I played games too late last night. Mayu is worthy of being from a rich family, and the games she brought are extraordinary. Ruby looked listless. This is not caused by me. Young Gil waved his hand helplessly, and casually took a sip of the wine in the glass. Sapphire came out from behind Ilya and looked at Mayu. What's the matter, Lord Mayu? Because there was no need to hide, Sapphire did not continue to hide in Mayu's hair. No, it's nothing, I'm just too happy. Mayu turned around. Although she was crying, Mayu showed an extremely happy smile. Sigh. Ilya, Little Black, Ruby, and Sapphire were dumbfounded. Seriously. Young Gil complained, and turned into golden particles and disappeared from the dining room. Teacher really has an ill-fated relationship. Chapter 317. Inside the Root of Origin, the gigantic body of the Root of Origin moved slightly. The dragon opened its ruby-like eyes. And through those eyes, one could see that the owner of those eyes was still a little confused. That was a sign of a delayed spirit conversion. Soon, the dragon's spirit was completely awake. Is it back? Wu-Ming muttered to himself. Because Wu-Ming did not intend to use a servant's clone to go to the target world, Wu-Ming removed his servant's clone and prepared to use his main body to go to the target world. Wu-Ming looked at his dragon claw, which was engraved with a black incantation similar to a dragon's. As expected, this incantation followed me. Wu-Ming was worried that the incantation would not appear on his main body, but it seemed that his worries were unfounded. Then, Wu-Ming looked at the sparse black mist around him, and a hint of displeasure appeared in his huge dragon eyes. Roar! Wu-Ming opened his huge dragon mouth, and countless bolts of lightning containing the power of origin shot out, instantly destroying all the black mud in Wu-Ming's vision. Just looking at it makes me unhappy, Wu-Ming said in disdain. At that moment, the incantation on Wu-Ming's dragon claw began to glow. The black light was like a sign of death, illuminating Wu-Ming's huge dragon eyes. What's this? Wu-Ming felt as if he was facing a great enemy. Wu-Ming could more or less guess what had happened. Because Wu-Ming came in when there was still a trace of black mud left inside the Root of Origin. The black mud acted like social animals, contacting countless of their own kind to surround Wu-Ming. Coupled with the black incantation on Wu-Ming's hand, the black mud that came to surround Wu-Ming acted like a signal transmitter. And the black mud knew exactly where Wu-Ming was. Perhaps the black mud was wreaking havoc outside the Root of Origin by now. That's good. It saves me the trouble of looking for you. Wu-Ming's dragon eyes flashed with a hint of coldness. The reason why the Origin Dragon was called the Origin Dragon was because it could only unleash its full strength in the Origin Dragon. It could only be said that it was fortunate that the black mud did not have intelligence and did not know how to protect its source. If Wu-Ming had come to the root with a lot of black mud, Wu-Ming would have had no choice but to run. After all, the black mud could also use origin power. The other origins were chaotic, but this one was filled with gentleness. Wu-Ming sat on the platform at the center of the Root of Origin and mobilized all of his origin power. In an instant, the boundless Root of Origin seemed to come alive and became chaotic. However, there were some sparks in the chaos. In an instant, countless black mud poured in from unknown directions, accumulating more and more. At this time, countless bolts of divine lightning burst out from the Origin's chaos and destroyed all of the black mud. The newly arrived black mud also subconsciously used origin power. However, as the saying went, two fists cannot fight four hands. Wu-Ming, who was in the dominant position, constantly destroyed the black mud. The mindless black mud did not know what a temporary retreat was, and all of them surged forward without thinking. Moreover, even when they began to use origin power, it only added a little burden to Wu Ming. Wu Ming increased his output, but the black mud still flew toward the flames like moths. Soon, the amount of black mud gradually decreased until the last bit was destroyed by Wu Ming's lightning. Despite this, Wu Ming did not feel at ease. Looking at the incantation on the back of his dragon claw, Wu Ming knew that the black mud was only a part of the problem. Not to mention the problem of the black mud in the other worlds was also a headache. If they coexisted with the ambitious fellows in the other worlds and received the power of origin power, not to mention reaching the great origin, no one would be able to stop them from doing evil. However, Wu Ming could not casually go out to deal with the great origin. If the black mud invaded when Wu Ming went out, Wu Ming would not even have a place to cry. Although it seemed that Wu Ming dealt with the invading black mud very easily, Wu Ming mainly relied on his origin power. If the black mud were to stay inside the great origin and Wu Ming attacked, Wu Ming would die like the black mud without even knowing how he died. Of course, Wu Ming would not be a suicide squad like the black mud. Wu Ming could still retreat. If that's the case, then I can only. Wu Ming's eyes flashed as he spoke. After a while, after half a day of work, Wu Ming raised his huge dragon claw and wiped the non-existent sweat. It's done. Now, it was visible to the naked eye that the great origin's interior was covered with a layer of membrane. In addition, Wu Ming's dragon body was covered with countless golden runes. The membrane was a protective measure that Wu Ming made to prevent the black mud from invading the great origin again. It was a membrane filled with origin power. The golden runes were an automatic technique that Wu Ming set up. Wu Ming decided to use his servant's method to go to the target world. When the black mud began to invade the great origin, the membrane would temporarily block it. After all, the black mud also had origin power. Although it could not be broken through instantly, it was enough to block it for a while. And while the black mud was blocked, the automatic technique that Wu Ming set up would be activated. Like a programmed automaton, Wu Ming's main body would automatically start to use origin power to deal with the black mud. And it would also automatically repair the damage to the membrane. Even if it did not work, Wu Ming could still contact his servant's clone and let his consciousness return to his main body. Although he could also split his consciousness, it would cause considerable damage to the mind, and in the long run, he might develop a split personality. Therefore, Wu Ming did not choose to split his consciousness. Everything is ready. Let's go to the new world. With that, Wu Ming slowly lay down and closed his eyes. The golden light split from Wu Ming's body. And just like when he changed classes, a space-time wormhole appeared, and the golden light flew in. And Wu Ming's main body fell into a deep sleep. A certain parallel world, 1994, Winterwood City, Japan. Near Winterwood City, inside the Great Origin Cave, where the Great Holy Grail was. A magic circle was automatically drawn in the Great Holy Grail's Great Origin Cave. As the drawing was completed, the Great Holy Grail's magic power was injected, and the magic circle lit up. A man wearing a pitch-black raincoat and an old-fashioned European-style black top hat stood in the center of the magic circle. The figure moved his legs in pitch-black leather shoes and walked out of the magic circle. Then he exclaimed, "This is the Great Origin Cave." Chapter 318. Job Level. Saver Real Name, Wu Ming Master. None Attribute. Lawful Good Ability Points. Strength, A. Uncertain Durability, A. Uncertain Agility, A. Uncertain Magic Power, A. Uncertain Luck, A. Uncertain Relic, A. Uncertain Job Level Skills. Origin Energy EX. Born from the Origin, mastered the method of using the Origin Energy. Evil Nemesis EX. Savior's Saver is Righteous. Once identified by the Savior, Wu Ming, as the evil party and their actions have affected the world, they will be attacked by the world's energy of the same level. The degree of the attack is enough to kill and cause fatal effects. Old Skills. Uncertain EX. Has the ability to change one's job level and attributes at will. This is the convenience of being in the Origin. Miracle. Has the ability to use relics that do not belong to the current job level. These relics are not assigned to the current job level. Relic. Divine Sword of Salvation Excalibur. Level. EX Type. Divine Sword of Salvation Distance. Maximum catch. It has the same name as the Sword of the Lake, and it has the same appearance as the Sword of the Lake. It is the amalgamation of the Manchala Formation. It can be broken down into the Manchala Formation. There are countless god relics in it. The Divine Sword has the power to save the world. It can release the lightning of salvation, and the light of salvation. 12 powers God's killer level, EX type. Divine Sword of Salvation Distance. 1 maximum catch. 1 There were 12 incarnations of Dragon Seed, Giant, Warrior, Storm, Annihilation, Flood, Vitality, Dependence, Thunder God, Phoenix, Sun, and Magician. Each incarnation was comparable to a noble artifact. It was the upgraded version of the power obtained from killing the gods. Chapter 319. It's Winterwood City, and I was directly summoned by the Great Holy Grail. Wu-Ming looked at the surroundings and said thoughtfully, "That's right, this man wearing a black leather jacket, black leather shoes, and a black top hat was Wu-Ming. The reason why Wu-Ming was dressed like this was because Wu-Ming's current class was Assassin. Is my real name Jack the Ripper? Or is it an accident?" Wu-Ming felt his own power and said helplessly, "After all, the class selection this time was automatically chosen by the Great Holy Grail." For Wu-Ming, although it didn't mean that it didn't matter what class he was, Wu-Ming wouldn't be troubled by the fact that he was an assassin. In Wu-Ming's view, every class had its own benefits, even the weakest assassin had its own benefits. Although my combat ability is weakened, it's still good to have my aura blocked. After all, I'm here to investigate, not to attack. With that, Wu-Ming walked out of the Great Hollow of Winterwood City. Even if it was a parallel world, the structure of the Great Hollow of Yuanzhong Mountain was still the same. However, this world was quite strange. Isn't it a little too peaceful? Wu-Ming stood on a high ground and looked at Winterwood City. At this moment, Winterwood City was peaceful. With Wu-Ming's eyesight, although he was an assassin, he could still see the scenery of Winterwood City. At this moment, people were coming and going in Winterwood City. Shops were open as usual, people were rushing about as usual, and students were attending classes as usual. It was very peaceful. Wu-Ming looked at the black dragon-shaped command seal on his hand and frowned. The seal is also useless, as if there's no black mud in this world. Then Wu-Ming turned his head. If I have to say something, it's only because this Great Holy Grail contains a large amount of black mud. However, this black mud doesn't possess the power of source. It's just pure evil. After Wu-Ming arrived here, he asked Kalas to examine the Great Holy Grail. Kalas discovered that apart from the pure evil of this world, there was nothing else in the Great Holy Grail. My inspection is flawless. Please don't doubt me, Master. A voice came from the black top hat on Wu-Ming's head. It was Kalas' cold voice. Kalas was able to change her appearance according to Wu-Ming's class. After all, Kalas was the one who changed her appearance into the golden-green dragon horn. I'm sorry, Kalas. I'm not doubting you. Wu-Ming apologized with a bitter smile. However, without the black mud, how did the black token bring me here? Wu-Ming was distressed. Kalas didn't say anything. She didn't know the truth. Forget it. Let's go check if there's anything special about this world's Winterwood City. After saying that, Wu-Ming turned into a black shadow and disappeared. In a Chinese restaurant, Wu-Ming sat in his seat, waiting for his order. Although Wu-Ming was still wearing a black leather jacket, black leather shoes, and a black top hat, the other people in the restaurant only treated Wu-Ming as a weirdo. It didn't affect them much. Soon Wu-Ming's Chinese dishes were served. Wu-Ming began to eat heartily. The reason why Wu-Ming came back to eat in this restaurant was that he happened to see his own country's dishes in a foreign country. After all, Wu-Ming was adopted by an old man in China. Before this, Wu-Ming had explored the entire Winterwood City. However, Wu-Ming didn't find anything wrong. Soon Wu-Ming finished his meal. No matter how you look at it, it's strange. Wu-Ming leaned on the chair and began to talk to himself. Wu-Ming, of course, said that there was no special event or trace of the black mud. In any case, the mark on Wu-Ming's hand wouldn't lie to Wu-Ming, right? The black mud had no consciousness. At this time, a priest came to the restaurant. Boss, a serving of mapo tofu. After saying that, the priest directly sat at the table closest to the door. Master, that person has a sacred mark on his hand. Kala suddenly said. Wuming took a closer look. There was indeed a mark on the back of the priest's hand that looked like a blood clot. Only the qualified magicians chosen by the Great Holy Grail could possess such a thing. A master who didn't summon a servant would possess a stigmata. And when the master summoned a servant, the stigmata would become a command incantation. And the priest seemed to have noticed that someone was observing him. He turned his head to look at Wuming's direction. However, all he saw was a table full of Chinese dishes and a stack of Japanese yen. There was no one on the chair. Was it an illusion? The priest was puzzled. But when he saw the mapo tofu on the table, the priest no longer paid attention to that direction. Instead, he focused on the mapo tofu. On the street, Wuming pressed down on his black hat and said with some surprise, I didn't expect that priest to be so vigilant. Wuming used his assassin's agility to leave the restaurant the moment the priest turned his head. By the way, those Japanese yen were taken by Wuming from some rich families. Of course, Wuming left some gold as an exchange. According to the information, now should be the time of the Holy Grail War. That person is likely to be one of the masters of this Holy Grail War. Kala said. Previously, when Wuming explored Winterwood City, he found out that the date was 1994. That was the time when the Fourth Holy Grail War began. In Ilya's world, the Holy Grail War was stopped and was never held again. However, it was different in this parallel world. If there were no accidents, the Holy Grail War should be held normally now. Kalas, I suddenly have a new idea. Suddenly Wuming smiled. Kalas did not say anything. She knew that her master's bad taste was about to start again. Wuming came to the big hole in the Yuzhong mountain. Wuming took out some materials from his black ripples and began to draw a magic circle. It was the same magic circle as when Wuming came to this world. That's right, Wuming decided to summon the heroic spirits to participate in the Holy Grail War. Anyway, he had the command seal black mark in his hand. The only uncertain part is the Holy Grail War. Maybe someone's wish caused the black mud to come, so we have to participate. Wuming earnestly said to Kalas. You're just interested, master. Kalas mercilessly ridiculed. How could that be? Isn't this a good opportunity to summon a servant and also summon Gil from Ilya's world? Wuming smiled. Okay, let's begin. After saying that, Wuming took out a clay plate from the black ripples beside him. This was something that Wuming had exchanged with Zelik. Wuming let young Gil drop the first blood to facilitate the summoning. Fill it up, fill it up, fill it up, fill it up. Cycle after cycle, then 5. However, when it's full, it's time to abandon it. Declare, thou shalt listen to my command, and my life is with thy sword. Answer the call of the Holy Grail. If you are willing to follow this will and this principle, then respond. I hereby swear that I am willing to accomplish all good deeds in the world, and I am willing to exterminate all evil deeds in the world. Thou shalt be the 7 days of the 3 spirits of words, from the wheel of inhibition, the guardian of the Libra. Following Wuming's spiritual words, the magic circle glowed, and a violent hurricane swept everything around it. In an instant, the clay plate in Wuming's hand glowed. In an instant, a figure appeared in the center of the magic circle. Long time no see, Hyunryong, said the figure. Wuming was dumbfounded. Chapter 320. Wuming was dumbfounded, but he did summon Gilgamesh. Looking at the figure that didn't look like a young Gil walking out of the dust, Wuming was silent. Although this Gilgamesh was an adult version, and although he couldn't rule out the possibility that young Gil had used a class card to fuse with himself and return to his adult form, but the Gilgamesh standing in front of Wuming was a woman, and there was no doubt that this Gilgamesh was the Gilgamesh that Wuming met. There was no doubt about it. At this moment, the female Gilgamesh was somewhat similar to when Angelica used the Gilgamesh class card. Her lower body was covered in golden armor, and a red cloak fluttered from her waist. Her upper body was still naked, and the red lines were stuck to the queen's sparkling waist. Her upper body was only covered by a black unlined shirt that could only cover her breasts. Her neck and wrists were adorned with golden accessories, and only one side had shoulder armor and gauntlets. Her ears were adorned with large golden earrings, and her hair was spread out. Her delicate and beautiful face, coupled with her arrogant red eyes looking at Wu Ming, slowly gave off the aura of a queen. How boring, Hyunryong. Have you fallen to the point of being an assassin? The female Gilgamesh, or rather the female version, mocked Wu Ming. Well, although I've thought about summoning other Gilgamesh, at least I still have a trace of young Gilgamesh's blood. Why? Wu Ming rubbed his forehead with one hand, and said rather helplessly. Just another young version of this king, and you want to compete with this king? Ridiculous. This king has already sent you back to the constellation of heroes. Queen Gil said domineeringly. Forget it. Wu Ming gave up struggling. After a while, Wu Ming learned that when Wu Ming summoned the servant, young Gil did receive the message, and was excited to come to this world. However, Wu Ming got one thing wrong, and that was Queen Sparkle. Although the clay tablet contained young Gil's blood, and was suitable for summoning young Gil, the Wu Ming itself was a very good artifact for the Queen of Summoning, Glint. Even if you came to a parallel world, changed your class and added a curse, your nature will not change. This king has already made up his mind. This king won't come out even if you don't act as a holy relic to summon him. However, if it's you, no one can win against this king. The queen responded to Wu Ming domineeringly. No. As expected of my direct disciple. Ahaha. Wu Ming laughed awkwardly. However, compared to Queen Sparkle or the adult version of Gilgamesh, the young Gil or the old version, the returned king, of Gilgamesh was easier to get along with. The adult version of Gilgamesh's personality was a bit bad. A minute of silence for the poor Gil. Since I've already summoned you, that's it. I originally wanted to summon Gil, who possessed a class card, but now it seems that you and I have formed a contract. Feeling that his magic was connected to Queen Sparkle and was supplying her, Wu Ming felt helpless. Fortunately, my assassin class isn't considered orthodox. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to pay for your magic consumption. As the top heroic spirit existence, Gilgamesh's consumption was naturally huge. If an assassin were to supply Queen Sparkle with magic, wouldn't it be draining her magic and sending her back to the heroic spirit palace? It's your honor to be able to let this king come, Hyunryong. Even if you are this king's teacher, you should be proud. Queen Sparkle said proudly. Her small face was shining with unusual happiness. Didn't you say that you snatched it? Of course, Wu Ming didn't say this sentence. After all, he knew his own disciple. If he said that, Queen Sparkle would be angry again. Gil, you should understand the current situation. Wu Ming cleaned up the traces on the scene. After all, summoning a servant here couldn't be seen by others. In any case, he had to respect the rules of the Holy Grail War. Even if it's you, you should call this king king. But seeing that you are this king's teacher's clone, this king allows you to call this king by his name. Queen Sparkle's face was arrogant. She looked at Wu Ming with a "you can be proud" look. That's why it's hard to get along with Jill when she's at her peak. Wu Ming sighed helplessly. This king has learned the specific situation from another young version of this king. It's about some black mud. With this king here, Hyunryong, you just have to lie down obediently. Wu Ming didn't say anything about the arrogant Queen Sparkle. Anyway, he had already gotten used to it. It was just that he couldn't get used to it for a while. Now that the black mud hasn't appeared, I suspect that someone used the Great Holy Grail, so I decided to participate in this Holy Grail War. This is also the reason why I summoned you. After all, in order to become a master, one must summon a servant. Therefore, Wu Ming chose to summon young Gil, and used the black dragon-shaped mark on his hand as a command spell. If he encountered the other 7 servants and masters, he could just say that he was an extra cheater. As a result, Wu Ming really became a master and occupied a spot. In fact, Wu Ming was worried about whether he would also occupy a spot. After all, he was summoned using the Great Holy Grail ritual. With the Holy Grail's nature, who knows if there would be any accidents? I always feel that if there is an accident, it must be caused by the master. Collis complained. It shouldn't be. Wu Ming was a little uncertain. He didn't find any abnormalities when he came to this world. And the magicians were also very stable. Strictly speaking, he was the abnormal one. Well, since you're already involved, then let's go through with it. Wu Ming smiled, but this smile was particularly gloomy. Collis, I haven't seen you for a long time. At this time, Queen Blink heard Collis's voice and greeted Wu Ming's top hat. I'm deeply honored, Hero King. Collis said very politely. After all, Collis was not Wu Ming. Towards a great king, Collis was still very respectful. Well, now I have to find a place to stay, so it's convenient for the next action. Wu Ming said and began to walk toward the big hole. Then you do well, Hienryong. This king will be here waiting for your good news. Queen Blink said, turned into golden particles and disappeared. This was the spiritual form of a servant. Not only Gilgamesh could do it, but also Wu Ming could do it. After all, Wu Ming was now in the state of a servant transformed by the Great Holy Grail. Then you stay here first. I'll go to Winterwood City to buy a house. Wu Ming waved his hand. As Wu Ming moved toward the downtown of Winterwood City, Collis' voice came from Wu Ming's head. I always feel that the future is worrying. Chapter 321. At night, Wu Ming brought Gilgamesh to a house. Located in the center of the bustling Winterwood City, it was a nice small villa with a courtyard. This was a place where residents were going abroad. Because they were in a hurry to go abroad, they didn't pack anything. The owner of the house left in a hurry with his suitcase. With Gilgamesh's temper, Wu Ming would definitely say, how can a place where civilians live bear the arrival of this king? Therefore, Wu Ming quickly found someone to decorate it during the day, and bought some high-end furniture. This time, he went to the Yuanzong mountain cave to pick up Gilgamesh. You made this king wait for so long. Do you know your crime, Hienryong? Gilgamesh stared at Wu Ming unhappily. Well, when you get home, be obedient or I'll starve you. Wu Ming warned Gilgamesh. Humph. You really dare to say that, Hienryong? Why aren't you hurrying to cook for this prince? Don't make this king wait for too long. With that, Gilgamesh swung his beautiful long hair, left Wu Ming, and walked straight into the small villa. Wu Ming shrugged helplessly, then walked in and began to cook with the ingredients he bought before. At the table, Gilgamesh gracefully tasted red wine, and enjoyed the sumptuous dishes prepared by Wu Ming. Hienryong, the food you make is delicious. Gilgamesh took another sip of red wine and praised. It's good that you are satisfied. By the way, Gil, do you have any wish to make for the Holy Grail? It's just the Holy Grail. It's mine to begin with. I only joined the Holy Grail War to take back what belongs to me. Gilgamesh responded to Wu Ming's words domineeringly. Yes, Gil is the best, Wu Ming said perfunctorily. What do you mean by that? Are you patronizing this king? Gilgamesh looked at Wu Ming with dissatisfaction. Then what about you, Hienryong? If it weren't for the black mud, would you have chosen to participate in the Holy Grail War? If it's me, I probably won't, Wu Ming said after thinking for a while. After all, I already have a Holy Grail. Moreover, the Holy Grail that I want to fulfill will not be able to fulfill my wish. Wu Ming smiled indifferently. After hearing Wu Ming's words, Gilgamesh scoffed at the Holy Grail's wish. That's true. That Holy Grail is said to be an omnipotent wishing machine, but in reality, it's not omnipotent at all. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that it's a fake. Wu Ming did not comment on Gilgamesh's mockery of the Holy Grail. Instead, he talked about another matter. By the way, I will go out and investigate the other trainee masters and servants later. I may come back very late. You should sleep first. Wu Ming put down the tableware and wiped the corner of his mouth. Got it. Remember not to lose anything. Even if you are already so inferior, you are still this king's teacher. This king doesn't want to lose his master the next day. Gilgamesh put down the wine glass and said indifferently. But Wu Ming, who understood Gilgamesh, naturally knew that Gilgamesh was concerned about him. As expected of Gilgamesh, his tsundere nature is very obvious. Wu Ming squinted his eyes and smiled at Gilgamesh. Are you kidding me? This king is the most ancient king, the hero king Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh's face instantly turned red. It was unknown whether it was because of anger or because he was pampered. Yes, I know. Remember to put the plate in the sink. I will come back later to wash it. But if you can help me wash it, then I will thank the heavens. Wu Ming said with a smile. Then he stood up and walked toward the door. Tisk, you actually let this king do such a thing? What kind of joke is this? Gilgamesh looked at Wu Ming's back as he sat on the chair angrily. My purpose for participating in the Holy Grail War. Isn't it to see you guys? At this moment, the king's face revealed his human side. Now the king was living more realistically than anyone else. There was basically no one on the streets at night. Only a few street lamps illuminated the darkness on the empty streets. A stray cat was lying on the chair resting. Suddenly, a black shadow flashed under the street lamp. The stray cat was so scared that it jumped and ran away. Wu Ming stood on the street lamp and looked at the city. Wu Ming thought about Gilgamesh. Since he could make Gilgamesh swear that he would not answer unless he summoned, and even snatch the summoning quota from young Gil this time. In addition, Wu Ming saw the emotions in Gilgamesh's eyes. Wu Ming smiled helplessly. Looks like Gil's dependence on me has become an obsession. No matter what, this Gilgamesh was just a little girl. Compared to the male version of Gilgamesh, Queen Sparkle still had the gentleness of a woman. Wu Ming left with Enkidu after Enkidu's death. At that time, Gilgamesh was still grieving over the death of his good friend. In addition, his master had also left. This was a little cruel for Gil. No wonder the history books recorded that Gilgamesh abandoned the Uruk after his good friend's death and began his journey to find the grass of immortality. This was a huge blow to Gil. You're just like Artoria, Gil. Wu Ming smiled and did not say anything. After all, she was a king. She was not as weak as Wu Ming thought. Wu Ming's figure flashed. As an afterimage appeared, Wu Ming disappeared from the street lamp and began his investigation. The first place to investigate was the overseer of the Holy Grail War, the Holy Church. Wu Ming did not choose to hide his identity as a servant, and directly walked into the Holy Church's Winterwood City branch. As soon as he entered the church, he saw a priest praying to the cross. Of course, this priest was not the Mapo priest that Wu Ming met before, but a priest who looked old. The priest who was praying heard someone coming in, and turned his head. It was a rather old but energetic man. From the marks on his palm, it could be seen that he was a martial artist. According to the results of Wu Ming's investigation, this quite capable old man was called Yan Fengli. You are a servant. Yan Fengli saw Wu Ming. At first he was surprised, but then he calmed down. Is it your master who wants to ask the overseer to answer his doubts? Yan Fengli said calmly. The master had doubts and sent a servant to the overseer of the Holy Church to answer his doubts. This kind of example was not unheard of. Yes, my master wants to know how many servants have gathered in this city, and whether we can start the war. Wu Ming pretended to be very indifferent and said, So that's the case. Can't wait to start the war? Yan Fengli was relieved. There are 4 servants gathered in this city, Lancer, Rider, Caster, and Berserker. Including you, there are already 5 servants. Yan Fengli said, Thank you. After that, Wu Ming turned into a shadow and disappeared. However, Yan Fengli's face was filled with confusion. The memory just now, I can't remember it at all. Is it the servant's noble phantasm or skill? Yan Fengli was seriously thinking about this strange phenomenon. Chapter 322. Yan Fengli's ability was not bad. He was worthy of being a supervisor twice. Wu Ming used Jack the Ripper's skill, Intelligence Erase, to erase all the information about Wu Ming in Yan Fengli's mind. Intelligence Erase B. At the end of the battle, including encounter, the memory of witnesses and opponents, recorded information about Jack's ability, real name, and appearance will disappear. But it can't fool scientific products such as cameras. Wu Ming didn't find anything like a camera inside the Holy Church, so Wu Ming didn't choose to use mist to cover his appearance. Instead, he chose to use Intelligence Erase. Wu Ming left the Holy Church and came to the street. Lancer, Rider, Caster, Berserker, and me, Assassin. Does this mean that the other party didn't notice me and Gilgamesh's archer? Wu Ming stood in the shadow and analyzed what Yan Fengli said. In addition to the 6 of us, there is still Saber with the best attributes. I don't know if she hasn't come yet or if she's hiding. Wu Ming thought for a moment and didn't think about it anymore. Well, in that case, let's leave it at that. For the time being, I can't figure out the reason for this world's abnormality. After a while, Wu Ming returned to the small villa. The house was dark, and the light was not turned on. Bam! Wu Ming turned on the light, and then Queen's voice came. Too slow. Golden particles began to gather on the sofa, and Gilgamesh's figure appeared. You haven't slept yet, Gil. Wu Ming sat next to Gilgamesh and said with a little surprise. What's there to be surprised about? As a servant, this king doesn't need to sleep. But you, this king has been waiting for you to come back. Can't you even say a word of thanks? Gilgamesh said proudly. Indeed, Gilgamesh was right. A servant only needed to enter spiritual form to replace sleep, and as long as there was enough mana or food, the servant could always be active. So my queen, have you put the tableware on the table in the sink? Wu Ming cast a smile at Gilgamesh. This king has already taken care of such a trivial matter. Gilgamesh crossed his arms in front of his chest and said rather disdainfully. Then go to sleep. No matter what, girls should go to bed early. Wu Ming patted Gilgamesh's head as if he was treating a child. And Wu Ming was ready to accept Gilgamesh's anger, but Gilgamesh didn't get angry. Wu Ming removed his hand from Gilgamesh's head and looked at Gilgamesh, who didn't do anything. Gilgamesh looked at Wu Ming and turned into golden particles and disappeared. This is a reward for you. Don't be too proud, Henryong. Gilgamesh's voice came from the air and then disappeared. Really, there should be a limit to arrogance. Wu Ming shook his head helplessly and then walked into the kitchen. When Wu Ming wanted to wash the dishes, he found that there was no tableware in the sink, but it was clean. Next to the sink, a few plates and bowls were neatly stacked together. It looked like someone had already washed them. Although the kitchen sink was in a mess, it was obvious that it was done by someone who didn't wash dishes for a long time. Really? Wu Ming laughed. He didn't expect Queen Flash to take his joke seriously. Wu Ming really didn't expect Gil to wash the dishes. However, Wu Ming bet that the male version of Adult Flash wouldn't do that. Only his Queen Flash would be arrogant. Since I have nothing to do, I might as well go investigate the enemy. After that, Wu Ming left the small mansion. Gilgamesh revealed himself and looked at the direction Wu Ming left. He muttered and then entered the spirit state. Boring. The next morning, Wu Ming returned to the small mansion. Gilgamesh came into contact with the spirit state and revealed himself. Did you go to investigate for information, Henryong? Gilgamesh returned to her good queen posture and said domineeringly. Yes, information is very important. Wu Ming nodded and went to the sofa to sit down. You already have this king. What are you still investigating for? If this king wanted, he could have ended the Holy Grail War last night. Gilgamesh also came to his exclusive seat and sat down. It was a rather tasteful and luxurious seat. It was also left behind by the owner of this house. Because he left in a hurry, Wu Ming directly spent money to buy some of the more valuable things. At first, the owner of this house didn't want to buy it. After all, it was also an antique. However, because he was in a hurry and left in a hurry, this seat was successfully traded by Wu Ming at a price that satisfied both parties. Then it was occupied by Gilgamesh. Although Wu Ming bought it for Gil, sitting on her luxurious seat, Queen Twinkle crossed her legs and supported her chin with one hand, silently looking at Wu Ming. After all, there is an old saying that goes, know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. Wu Ming poured a glass of wine for Gilgamesh and handed it to Her Majesty Queen, who was crossing her legs. So, what information did you find out, Henryong? Gilgamesh took the transparent goblet and took a sip. Then, she looked at Wu Ming as if her anger had subsided. You also know that the Holy Grail War was started by the so-called three families. While talking, Wu Ming also poured himself a glass of wine. The three families are composed of the Inosaka family, the Mesotome family, and the House of Einstein barons. Last night, I explored the local residences of these three families and found two servants. One is a male servant suspected of being a king in the Inosaka family, and the other is a female servant with snake breath in the Mesotome family. After taking a sip of wine, Wuming continued. There is no one in the castle of the House of Einstein barons in Winterwood City. They should have not yet arrived in Winterwood City. Plus, there is a supervisor of the Holy Church. It is inferred that the servant of the House of Einstein barons should be a saber swordsman. The servants of the Mesotome family and the Inosaka family are not caster or berserker. As for why, I will tell you later. In short, these two should be lancer and rider. Wuming put down the glass, and then took out a map from nowhere. And here I found traces of berserker. Wuming pointed to the place on the edge of Winterwood City, and that place was the Amiya Mansion. Wuming went to the Amiya Mansion with the idea of seeing Shiro Amiya in this world. As a result, he accidentally found multiple magic barriers and traces of berserker. There is no way, a big guy who seems to have no sense of reason can't hide. There is no need to guess. And this is the berserker that Wuming knows, Hercules. When Wuming found berserker, he was waiting in the courtyard of the Amiya Mansion. Although Wuming did not find the master, Wuming could almost guess. Magician killer, Amiya Kiritsugu. Wuming narrowed his eyes. And then did you fight with berserker? Gilgamesh shook the glass and asked with interest. Of course not, I just accidentally found the trace of berserker, and then quickly retreated, but the other side should have found me. Wuming remembered the guy who wanted to become a partner of justice, and could not help but frown. A partner of justice is as cunning as a fox. Chapter 323. Although Wuming knew Amiya Kiritsugu from another world, she was a righteous partner, who would sacrifice a small number of people to save the majority of people. Wuming sneered. Your smile is really pleasant, Hyenryong, but this king likes it. Gilgamesh praised Wuming. Wuming reacted and rubbed his cheeks. Is it a negative effect caused by spiritual pollution? Then Wuming continued. I only met these servants once, and then they quickly left me, and I also met Castor here. That's why I judged that the two servants of the Inosaka family and Mitsuhiro family were not Castor and Berserker. Wuming pointed to the Winterwood Hotel in Winterwood City. Listening to you, did you fight with Castor? Gilgamesh said. As a king, Gilgamesh could naturally understand the meaning of Wuming's words. Well, and the other party is my acquaintance, it's really ironic. Wuming smiled sarcastically. Then, why don't you tell me about your ironic experience to help this king pass the time? Gilgamesh casually drank a mouthful of wine and leaned back in his seat. Then Wuming began to recall. After leaving the Amiya Mansion, Wuming found a street lamp and stopped. I should have thought about it. How can there be no Amiya Kiritsugu in Winterwood City? Wuming, wearing a black leather coat and a top hat, stood on the street lamp with his legs straight, looking into the distance. Lancer, lancer, archer, archer, rider, cavalry, assassin, assassin, and berserker, berserker, have all been confirmed. Saber, swordsman, is probably not here yet, so only Castor, magician, is left. Then Wuming looked at the Winterwood Hotel, which was the largest hotel in Winterwood City. Basically, some foreigners would stay here. Let's try our luck. Wuming's figure disappeared. In the Winterwood Hotel, a man with short blonde hair in his 20s was talking with a woman beside him. It seemed that the two were lovers. Suddenly, blue particles appeared around the two of them. And the blue particles turned into a young man with short blue hair, wearing a classical costume and holding a staff. What's going on, Castor? The man asked. Master, there is a servant coming, and the sensing technique I set up in the distance is working. The blue-haired man said lazily. So, are you sure you can kill the other party? The man with short blonde hair said to kill. It seemed that he was a very arrogant person. The other party is just an assassin, no problem, but I'm afraid that the other party will sneak in. The blue-haired man meant that if the assassin who specialized in dealing with the master sneaked in when he was not there, then it would be troublesome. Don't worry, I still have the moon marrow elixir. The man with short blonde hair took out a few test tubes with some silver-white liquid in them. That's all right, I'm leaving, master. After that, the blue-haired man disappeared. Is it okay, Kenneth? A woman asked with some concern. Although she did not like her fiancé very much, she did not hate him. It was okay to be worried. Don't worry, Sora. Let's not talk about my moon marrow elixir. He is a famous servant. The man named Kenneth said proudly as if he was praising himself. Well, that's good. The woman named Sora nodded. Then, let me see the glory of Ku Churin. Kenneth looked at the place where the blue-haired man disappeared and said carefully. On the other side, Wuming, who had arrived at Tuki Hotel, suddenly felt that something was wrong. Is there an idle person dispersing technique around? It seems that I've been discovered. Although he was discovered, Wuming did not panic. As a qualified assassin, Jack the Ripper was undoubtedly qualified. Not only was his aura concealment level A+, but he also had support skills and noble phantoms, such as intelligence concealment, Fog Knight's murder, dark fog, and so on. For an assassin, it was simply a success. This was also why Jack the Ripper, even if he was an assassin, could cause great headaches to both the red and black sides. It seems that this caster is quite a powerful character to be able to detect me without me noticing. Wuming stood in front of the Winterwood Hotel, and did not hide. He just waited for the arrival of the other party. Then you guessed wrong. It's just a little trick, Senior. Suddenly, a familiar and frivolous voice was heard. This voice. Is it Cuculin? Wuming felt a little helpless. Could it be that this was a battle between different classes to mock the battle between Serence and Cuculin? Sure enough, Senior, it's really you. With the appearance of the blue particles, Cuculin's figure appeared in front of Wuming. It's really God's will, Cuculin. Wuming looked at Cuculin indifferently. Although in Wuming's memory, Cuculin was a freak in blue tights, but in front of him, Cuculin was a mage in a robe and holding a wooden scepter. You've changed a lot. Wuming joked. I have the adaptability of a caster magician, but I didn't expect you to become an assassin. Did something happen to you after you left Connaught? Cuculin asked in a comfortable tone, as if he was chatting with a good friend whom he hadn't seen for many years. I did experience a lot. Speaking of which, were you killed by Maeve's plot? Wuming was concerned about Cuculin's death. In Wuming's history, Cuculin was summoned by Maeve. Cuculin was also a disciple of Skaha, and fought with his fellow apprentice, Ferdia. In the end, Cuculin won a Pyrrhic victory. Then he was plotted against by a bard invited by Maeve and was killed by his own gun. Ah yes, I was plotted against by Maeve. In the end, I was killed by my own gun. How ironic. Although Cuculin said so, he did not show much anger. Instead, he calmly accepted his own death. Senior, you shouldn't be dead. I heard some rumors about you from my teacher. What Cuculin meant was that Wuming, as the powerful body of the Dragon of Origin, should not die. I'm not dead, but this time, I participated in the Holy Grail War because I have some things to investigate. Wuming nodded. Oh, so that means it's fine even if I don't obtain the Holy Grail? What a coincidence. I don't need the Holy Grail, but my master does. Although he's quite annoying, he's still my master. I'll help him out a little. Then Cuculin flashed his staff. Come and fight with me, Sira. Cuculin touched his head, not annoyed that Wuming had exposed his secret. Obviously, you were summoned as a caster. Not only did you not ambush in your workshop, but you also wanted to fight me in close combat. I'm really convinced by your muscle head. Wuming said rather helplessly. Well, since my senior said so, then I will fight with you as a caster. Cuculin waved his hand in the direction of Wuming, and a light appeared under Wuming's feet. A rather simple and unadorned rune came into sight. This was the Lune rune that Cuculin had set up during the close combat with Wuming, and now it was activated. You know I'm your senior. How could I not notice such an obvious trap? Wuming said as he accelerated and jumped away from the light. The moment Wuming left, a violent explosion occurred at the position of the rune. The flames of the explosion spread to Wu Ming, who had not completely escaped from the explosion range. The flames raged in the atmosphere, absorbing oxygen and burning fiercely. Wu Ming, on the other hand, disappeared into the flames. Of course, this little trick naturally couldn't kill Wu Ming, and Cuculin doubted whether it could cause any harm to Wu Ming. After all, I also appeared as an assassin. This is the beginning of the Holy Grail War. See you next time, Cuculin. Wu Ming's voice came out from the atmosphere, and then disappeared. Under the cover of the flame explosion, Wu Ming's A+ level aura made Cuculin lose sight of Wu Ming. Well, that's it. With that, Cuculin turned into blue particles and entered the state of spiritualization. That's it, I simply fought a few times with the caster and then retreated. Wu Ming put down his glass and leaned on the sofa. Gilgamesh, on the other hand, looked at Wu Ming with interest. I didn't expect the caster to be your junior. Then again, this junior is related to your identity in other myths. I haven't heard that the Uruk Hyenryong has a junior. Because of interest, Gilgamesh began to shake his legs. Looking at Gilgamesh's shaking legs, Wu Ming said that he couldn't see anything from the armor, so he simply stopped looking. After all, I'm also a traveler. It's not surprising that I know people in other areas. Wu Ming said casually. So, do you have a plan? Gilgamesh asked. Gilgamesh didn't believe that Hyenryong, who had investigated almost all the enemies, didn't have a plan. The Uruk Hyenryong's reputation was not only obtained by protecting the people. As the closest person to Hyenryong, Gilgamesh naturally knew that Hyenryong had a very high strategy. Moreover, this time Wu Ming appeared in the world as an assassin. Wu Ming, who didn't have the ability to break through, would definitely choose to use wisdom. However, this time Gilgamesh guessed wrong. I didn't prepare a plan, I just simply investigated the enemy. Wu Ming waved his hand tiredly. After all, you said that if you wanted to, you could end the Holy Grail War in one night. The key is that there's no need at all. Wu Ming smiled indifferently as he leaned on the sofa. After Wu Ming finished speaking, Gilgamesh frowned. What do you mean? Gilgamesh asked. Do you still remember why I came to this world? Wu Ming hinted. Gilgamesh suddenly realized. After all, Gilgamesh came to this world in the form of occupying a spot in the Holy Grail War. It was inevitable that he would pay a little attention to the Holy Grail War. I almost forgot. You came to this world because of that strange black mud. Yes, Wu Ming's original purpose was the black mud with origin power, and he participated in the Holy Grail War only because Wu Ming hadn't discovered the black mud for the time being. Therefore, he suspected that there was something fishy about the Holy Grail War, so he participated. In other words, I just have to wait quietly, wait for the final victor, and then investigate the truth about the black mud. Beautiful boy. CIT was a display of the skill of a beautiful young man that made people want to protect him. Although it had a magic effect that could charm people regardless of gender, it could be avoided by magic skills. Even if there was no magic resistance, the effect could be mitigated if there was resistance. Although Beautiful Boy's skill was only C rank, having this skill meant that his appearance was heaven-defying. And the effect could be said to be even more effective on Shiny Girl. At this moment, it was not an exaggeration to say that Gilgamesh was a peerless beauty. These mongrel cultivators, bastards. How dare they look straight at this king? Gilgamesh seemed to be really angry. Forget it, after all, it's just to experience the people's feelings. It's not like they will lose a piece of meat. By the way, it's better to quickly change your outfit so that you can avoid trouble. Wu Ming comforted Gilgamesh. After all, if Gilgamesh felt humiliated and took out his sword, then they would be finished directly. That's true. I'll do as you say today. Gilgamesh's body began to emit light. Gilgamesh wanted to change his outfit here. After Wu Ming saw it, he directly pulled Gilgamesh and ran away. When the passers-by saw the blonde beauty's boyfriend pulling the beauty away, they only felt a little regretful that there was no beauty to see. Then they began to busy themselves with their own things. A moment later, Gilgamesh and Wu-Ming returned to the entrance of the amusement park. Why does this king have to hide and change his outfit? This king is the hero king, Gilgamesh. If he wants to hide, it should be these bastards. Gilgamesh said unhappily. After all, Wu-Ming suddenly pulled Gilgamesh's hand. Wu-Ming was still wondering why Gilgamesh did not get angry, but now it seemed that his anger was delayed. Well, don't forget the hidden rules of the Holy Grail War. Just put up with it. Wu-Ming wiped the non-existent cold sweat. Gilgamesh looked at his hand that was pulled by Wu-Ming, and then looked at Wu-Ming in a good mood. This king forgives your rudeness. Then, as if he thought of something, Gilgamesh looked at Wu-Ming slyly. So, Hyenryong, what do you think of this king's outfit? Gilgamesh said as he moved closer to Wu-Ming. Wu-Ming looked at Gilgamesh's current outfit. The upper body was a white shirt with a black woman's jacket, but it still could not hide the queen's towering breasts. The lower body was a short skirt, black silk stockings, and a pair of high boots, which showed off the queen's slender legs. Long golden hair without any impurities was casually spread out and draped over her back. Her beautiful face was breathtaking, and her red pupils, similar to Wu-Ming's, exuded a lofty arrogance. She had the proper queen style. However, aren't you wearing the same type of clothes as me? Wu-Ming was slightly puzzled. The two of them were dressed like a couple, and with their red pupils, if it were not for their different hair colors, they would be siblings or siblings. What's wrong with that? You're my teacher. There's nothing wrong with wearing the same clothes as my teacher. Gilgamesh frowned slightly, and a trace of displeasure appeared on his peerless face. That's not a big deal, but the problem is that it's even more eye-catching now. Wu-Ming said helplessly, and pointed at the crowd around them. Gilgamesh looked around, and realized that the people who were busy with their own things had all stopped what they were doing, and were staring blankly at Wu-Ming and Gilgamesh. To be precise, they were looking at Gilgamesh alone. This group of mongrel cultivators trash. In an instant, golden ripples appeared, and countless relics appeared. Wait a minute. Wu-Ming's panicked voice resounded through the sky. Chapter 326. In the amusement park, Gilgamesh walked while licking his ice cream, while Wu-Ming followed Gilgamesh with a tired face. At the entrance of the amusement park, Wu-Ming stopped Gilgamesh's noble phantasm, and used a simple hypnosis magic to hypnotize everyone at the scene, and erase their memories. Then Wu-Ming cast a simple magic to reduce his presence on Gilgamesh, and quickly ran away with Nyang Shanshan. Although Wu-Ming, as Jack the Ripper, shouldn't be able to use magic due to his class, but he couldn't stop Wu-Ming the cheater. The servant's body was Wu-Ming's avatar in the Great Source. All the noble phantasm was on the main body, and the noble phantasm on the servant's body was only the avatar of Wu-Ming's noble phantasm. The assassin class was because the Great Holy Grail captured Wu-Ming's adaptability to that class, so it recreated Jack the Ripper's noble phantasm. But because of Wu-Ming's cheating, the power of Source, Wu-Ming's Jack the Ripper was not pure Jack the Ripper, but a new version of Jack the Ripper that was mixed with some other things. That was why Wu-Ming's assassin class had some attributes, skills, and noble phantasm that didn't belong to Jack the Ripper. However, cheating on a large scale was not advisable. Even if it was Wu-Ming, he couldn't violate the rules of the servant class too much. Therefore, Wu-Ming cheated a little, so that Jack the Ripper, who originally couldn't use magic, could use some small magic. Needless to say, the magic of dispel, suggestion, and reducing one's presence was really useful. After that, Wu-Ming bought an ice cream for Jusama to comfort Jusama's dignity. Gilgamesh, who was walking in front, looked at Wu-Ming, who was quite tired, thought for a moment, and threw the ice cream in his hand behind him. Naturally, Wu-Ming was able to react in time, and caught it in one go. Gil, what are you doing? Wu-Ming looked at the ice cream somewhat puzzled. This king has decided to reward you properly. I'll leave the leftover ice cream to you. Gilgamesh swung his elegant blonde hair, and said in a tone that brooked no refusal. Huh? Are you kidding me? Wu-Ming looked at the half-melted ice cream helplessly. What, you're not satisfied? Gilgamesh turned around and stared at Wu-Ming with her beautiful red eyes. Wu Ming's eyes revealed the meaning of if you say no, you're done for. How could that be? Wu Ming scratched the back of his head awkwardly. Humph. Then, is there anything for this king to play? Gilgamesh snorted, turned her head, and scanned the entire amusement park. Wu Ming thought for a moment, then proposed. Since you, Gil, haven't played before, then let us all experience it. Well, let this king see what's so attractive about these boring devices. With that said, Gilgamesh took Wu Ming's hand and walked towards a certain project. The sign in front of them had the words roller coaster written on it. Wait a minute, don't pull me. Shut up, this is your punishment for pulling this king's hand just now. Yes, your majesty. On the roller coaster that had already started, Wu Ming enjoyed the cool breeze brought by the roller coaster, and couldn't help but think of Mayu and the others. He still remembered when Wu Ming brought Mayu, Ilya, and Little Black to the amusement park to play. Ilya and Mayu were instigated by Little Black and were half-forced to play on the roller coaster. As a result, when the roller coaster started, Ilya was so scared that she cried and screamed. Mayu was fine, but her face was also pale. In the end, during the roller coaster ride, Ilya and Mayu gradually got used to it, scaring Little Black quite a bit. Looking at Wu Ming's smiling face, Gilgamesh, who was sitting with Wu Ming, frowned but didn't say anything. After that, Wu Ming and Gilgamesh tried the various projects in the amusement park one by one. In the blink of an eye, it was already afternoon, and the amusement park was closed. Because the two of them came at noon, there wasn't enough time. At the entrance of the closed amusement park, Wu Ming looked happy as if he was reminiscing about the past. Gilgamesh, on the other hand, looked bored. Those things are only suitable for civilians to play. Like the roller coaster, that speed can't even compare to Vimana. I really don't know what's there to be happy about. Hearing Gilgamesh's complaint, Wu Ming, who was walking side by side with Gilgamesh, looked at Gilgamesh. Well, Gil is the hero king. It's normal for him to be bored by these projects. To be honest, compared to the exciting facilities in the amusement park, combat can stimulate Gilgamesh's desire more. This is a fact. Gilgamesh, who has fully adapted to combat and surprise attacks, can't feel excited by the amusement park's projects. Although that's true, but Gil was also scared in the haunted house before. Wu Ming smiled mischievously. Because he saw that Gilgamesh didn't care much about the projects, Wu Ming used the opportunity to enter the haunted house to personally scare Gilgamesh. It can only be said that Gilgamesh still has the weakness of a young girl. Although Gilgamesh only frowned at the time, but from the release of the Gate of Babylon, it can be seen that Gilgamesh was really scared at that time. Cheap joke, this king is particularly annoying, Gilgamesh said proudly. Well, experiencing all kinds of emotions, this is what a king needs to do. Didn't I teach you? Wu Ming smiled, then pulled Gilgamesh's hand. Let's go home and prepare an unprecedented feast for our long-awaited disciple. Humph. For you to hold this king's hand without permission. This king will not care this time, but if this dinner tonight is not to this king's liking, then you are finished, Hian Riyong. Yes, I know, let's go, my king. The setting sun shone on the man and woman. The two people's shadows were getting longer and longer, farther and farther. At night, Wu Ming turned into a night walker and shuttled through the streets. Soon, Wu Ming stopped at the house on the side of the street. Because Wu Ming felt a battle intent. That's right, that's the battle intent of a servant. Suddenly, on the top of the building where Wu Ming was, on the street lamp beside the house, golden particles appeared, and Gilgamesh, who had recovered his golden armor, appeared. It's just a hyena's howl. Why, do you want to go? Gilgamesh said rather disdainfully. It's not too much to go and have a look. The last saber swordsman is probably here. This battle intent is probably the invitation sent by Saber, swordsman. I'm very interested. Wu Ming pressed his top hat and said calmly. To be able to see a good show, this king doesn't mind being a spectator for once. With that said, Gilgamesh turned into golden particles and disappeared in spirit form. Wu Ming activated the aura barrier and quickly went to the place where the battle intent originated, Winterwood Beach. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.